Uh, One thing I wish to warn everybody is that we're going to take the Assabet River Bluff property and put it at the end of the discussion. And Marisa Rasmussen is going to present some plans that she has, and we'll have a chance then to have a discussion about that particular project in some detail. So those who are joining us, and I see some names that are quite familiar, already on the call. Those who are joining us for that purpose, we want to give you ample opportunity to have that, but we also want to be able to move through the general discussion. Perhaps Heather, you will pop up the screen for us. And just to remind everybody again, we'll be moving through by categories. We'll mention each project and then we'll go back and look at them by category and welcome public comment.
Diane, should we start by introducing ourselves?
Oh, hello, I forgot. Yes, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Nancy, you want to start?
Nancy Nelson, representative from the Historical Commission.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul Bohm, representative from the Recreation Commission.
Sarah, who so nicely reminded me. Sarah.
Sarah Grimwood, Natural Resources Commission appointee.
Thank you, Charles.
Charles Phillips, appointed by the Housing Authority.
Thank you, Charles. Burton.
Burton Flint, Planning Board.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter Ward, Vice Chair and Select Board appointee.
Thank you so much, John. We can't hear you, John. You're
Got
muted.
it. John Kratzley, Select Board appointee.
Thank you, Tom.
I'm Kern, Select Board appointee.
And myself, Diane Proctor, Select Board appointee. Thank you, Sarah. We can now formally begin the meeting. Okay. Heather's going to screen share with us so that we can see.
I just lost you all. I have to go out and come back in. It's Nancy.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, none of this will be.
Don't stop. Don't stop.
Okay. So this is the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, and sometimes called the CPA by some projects. And Heather, you're going to be moving it, right? So I can't. Okay. The CPA in Concord is organized around the following: 1.5% out of the possible 3% surcharge on real estate property tax bills, which was voted by the town. The first $100,000 of taxable value is exempt. Persons with an income less than 80% of the area median income are also exempt. Seniors with income less than 100% of the area median income are also exempt. Locally raised funds are matched on a percentage basis by the funds in the State Community Preservation Fund. Many of you in the letters that you have written have reminded us of the importance that this is really a taxable income and therefore has about it the authority of citizens. Thank you very much, Heather. We've spent 22% of our resources in the past on community housing projects, and you can see them here quite readily: the Peter Buckley, the Walden Street Concord Housing Trust, the Lally Woods, and the Emerson Annex and some properties there. Thank you. We spent 35% on historic preservation. This wonderful portrait, which hangs in Town Hall, Townhouse. There's the Townhouse exterior renovation, the Thoreau birthplace, and the Nashotok Bridge restoration. We've spent 17% of our resources on open space: Warner's Pond Watershed Management Plan, the Hubbard Park Brook Farm Field in the town of Concord and Concord Land Conservation, the Granite Post and Chain Fence at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, and Warner's Pond Dam in the town of Concord. And we spent 24% of our funds in the past on the CCHS field renovations, phases 1, 2, and 3, on the White Pond Restoration Project, which has been forwarded by the town of Concord, the Doug White playing fields, and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, which we have all enjoyed and will continue to enjoy for generations to come. CPA funding application process starts very early in the year, at least for those of us who live on an academic calendar. It's quite different. But for those who live on a January 1st to January 1st calendar, I mean, June 1st calendar to June 1st, there's public information meetings. There's the application deadline by September 17th, which is very early for some people. The CPC group site visit, we go around and see each of these sites. Their applicants present to us in thoughtful ways. There's a public hearing, which is tonight. And then we have deliberations through January of 2022. And all are welcome to participate in those and to observe. Although this is formally a public hearing, the public is always welcome. The 2021 applications versus available funds. Applications are for $2.5 million. We have funding of 1.815773. We have an undesignated fund balance of $237, a land acquisition reserve of $100,000, almost $101,000, but we'll also have to put aside some money for the fact that we don't have a full 10% for housing this year, which is expected on any CPC funding. Thank you, Heather. 221 applications for CPA or CPC funding. Recreation is 75,000. You can see by this pie chart, it's quite readable. The administration costs, community housing, historic preservation, open space and community housing together. Thank you. Community housing, there's one project that is a total requested for $101,000. Could we go back to that slide for a minute, Heather, the previous slide? Because I think I misspoke, for $28,000, thank you. This is a regional housing services. This is something the CPC has funded for a very long time. And it's an intermunicipal program providing professional housing services to develop and monitor Concord's affordable housing programs. And this has been an important part of the contributions that we have made. Our funding would be $28,000 and we have matching fundings in an equal amount. Do we have any questions about that particular category before we begin? And if you could raise your hand by the mechanical hand raising, then I can see you, because otherwise I can't. And if you raise your hand, I would see you right away on my screen. Hearing none or seeing none, speak up if I missed you for some reason. Okay, the Regional Housing Services Program. We have 4 projects here for a total requested of just under $500,000. The first is the 110 Walden Street Preservation Phase 4. This is the Concord Home for the Aged. It's a distinguished property that sits in the center of Concord and has for many years represented a commitment to supporting those for whom housing in the center of Concord is not always easy. Summary of the project. Phase 4 includes the implementation of several of the projects recommended in Section 3 of the Historic Structures Report, repairing the siding and painting the exterior of the house, basement foundation repairs, granite stair alignment and repointing, and asbestos removal, which for any of you who know anyone who has suffered from any kind of lung cancer is critical, and fascia and column repairs on the front of the house. There's a matching fund of $56,000, and they're requesting $150,000. We're going to go through each of these before we go back to ask for any questions. There's the Old Manse, a beloved structure to all Concordians. You can see here that there are structural needs. Can you go down to the next slide for us, Heather, please? This is for the painting of the entire structure, replacement of damaged clapboards, repair of the deteriorated window glazing, and repairs to trim the siding. The goals of the critical work are to help ensure the integrity of the building's exterior envelope by preventing deterioration, protecting against water infiltration, and protecting wood from moisture and ultraviolet damage. For anyone who has ever lived in an 18th century, 1800s I mean, 1700s and 18th century property, you will know that each of these goals is very, very important. And to spend any time looking at the Manse, you will see that those needs are important ones. Thank you. And you can see that they've got matching funds that are, and we've received some supportive letters for this one, as we did for the 110 Walden Street. Now, the Wright Tavern structural repairs. Last year, we gave money to the Wright Tavern, and they have presented a report that explains to us how they've been using that money to give order and coherence to their approach to this project and to the work that they're going to be doing on an interior basis in the coming year. Thank you, Heather. A summary of the project, and there's great detail on the website if you wish to see it. Structural repairs, including reinforcing all rafters and floor joists in the attic, adding a ridge beam, installing new lally columns, or lolly columns, I don't know how to say that properly, and lally or lally, well, help, Tom, lally?
You say tomato, I say tomato. You got it.
Okay, terrific. And beams in the basement, repointing foundation bricking, insulating the building, installing a dehumidifcation system, which is absolutely critical, and a new fire suppression system, upgrading the alarm system, upgrading the water line, and repairing landscaping. Thank you very much. You can see that we've given $260,000 last year. They've raised $375,000, and they're asking for $260,000 this year. So that's actually that particular set of projects. Are there any questions? I believe that's that category.
This is one more.
This is also one. The Oral History Preservation and Access Project. We've received an update on this, which shows how much money the town and the Concord Free Public Library Corporation has already given to help support this endeavor in the past. And we've received support for this letter, for this particular project from various citizens and organizations in town. The digitization and the transcription of a collection of almost 500 recordings of Concord oral histories, many of which are only available on audio cassettes, which are rapidly deteriorating. They're asking for $22,841, and they have matching funds of $1,900. So given those 4 projects, and I'll repeat them: 110 Walden Street, the Old Manse, the Wright Tavern, and the Concord Oral History Project, do we have any questions from the public who are attending? Mary Hardman, good evening. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Diane. Thank you. My name is Mary Hardman. I live at 16 Concord Green. I'm on the FinCom, but I'm speaking for myself. I have a question about the matching contributions. Are those, how was that money? Was that money raised privately, or where did the matching funds come from?
It depends really on the project, Mary. Sometimes it's privately raised funds. An organization, for instance, with the Old Manse, there's an Old Manse group that helps to support that. Then there's the Trustees of Reservations that helps to support that. So different supporting funds come from different organizations, rather depending upon the project. Is there one that you have? Is there one that you would like to know more about in particular?
No, my real question is, are any of these matching funds coming from the general fund? So are they coming from property taxes, but outside of the CPC surcharge?
The only one that I believe in this particular group that resides in the town's funding, and would therefore very much be an important part of the FinCom, is the Oral History Preservation. And that's really been supported by people that the town has hired to do this work independently and apart from the work that needs to go forward.
And that was a small amount, if I remember.
Very small
correctly.
amount.
Okay, great. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for the question. It's a good question. Are there other questions about any one of these projects? Okay, hearing or seeing none, we now go to open space and community preservation categories. Well, the first one, Assabet River Preservation Bluff, we're going to skip right now but we'll look at it in general. And so if you could go down one more slide for me. Assabet River Bluff Preservation and Housing Land Acquisition. We have received, as of whatever hour this tonight, over 41 letters addressing concerns and thoughts about this particular project. And the reason we're holding off this presentation is because Marisa Rasmussen is, I believe, with us, and she's going to present a slightly more specific rendering of how they think this land might be used. And then we will have ample opportunity for questions and discourse. I will summarize those 41 letters, which I've read very carefully, knowing that I'm not going to summarize every subtle aspect of the very important letters that have been written, but I think I can generally hit most of the highlights of those letters. So here's the summary of the project. Acquisition of 2 parcels of land for both open space and community housing. The project proposes to preserve river frontage and woodland and create the opportunity for the development of affordable housing. This is the D. Giovanni land that has been put in trust and is up for sale for $2.8 million. And it is the collaboration of 3 different organizations that would make the securing of this property possible. Next, thank you, Heather. Open space, recreation, and historic preservation. We have one project here, and the requested budget is $300,000. This is the Junction Village Open Space Project. Now, we all know about Junction Village. For anybody who's been following town politics, this has been on the plate for many years. You all will remember, this is the affordable housing that's being built in West Concord. People have been concerned about the land around it and its care and tending. And so this Junction Village Open Space Project has been presented. It's the creation of passive open space on 6.5 acres of land along the Assabet River again, as it stretches behind the MCI property and perpendicular to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. The project scope involves a multi-year process that will begin with general design and invasive plant removal, which will evolve to a developed parkland with interpretive signage, a pollinator meadow, and gathering spaces and public art. We have $25,000 in matching funds coming from the group that is developing this particular property, and then CPA funding, they're requesting $300,000. This is being supported by the West Concord Advisory Group. Do we have any discussion about this particular project that anybody would like to add or address? Please raise your hand if you do, or if you don't know how to raise your hand, speak up so I can hear you. Thank you very much. Okay, Heather, this is the open space and recreation category. We have 3 projects totaling $636,000. The first of these is the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. We're all familiar and grateful participators in the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail and all of the open space and fantastic opportunities it presents for walking and biking and just in general and total enjoyment of the open space around Concord. You can see here you can see here the declivity. If you could go back to the picture for just a minute, Heather. For those who have not walked this particular spot, you can see the declivity. Is my arrow showing on the sheet? It isn't, is it? Heather, could you highlight the declivity that takes place? Thank you very much. From where the trail begins down to, and then over to your left, rather immediately would be White Pond. Now, if you were to take the area to your right, which we can see a little bit better on the first picture, that rise on the hill goes right up to a series of houses, private houses. And so the proposal has to do with building fences and other means of protecting the properties that are around that. Funding will be used to provide additional fencing, plantings, benches, interpretive signage, and other amenities to enrich and enhance the visitor experience along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Thank you. There are $570,000 of matching funds for this. And the CPA, they're requesting $300,000. The Assabet River Pedestrian Bridge has been something I believe Concord has been talking about for quite a long time. You have to really go to the train depot in West Concord to find this and to imagine where it might go. But if you stand at the train station and walk down a bit and then cast your eyes across the river and over to the area where there is Concord Woods Dental and a new hotel and all sorts of other, I believe there's an Emerson Hospital outlet there, many. Can you point that out for us, Heather, and with your arrows? Many, no, over further to your right, all up in there. There are all sorts of new developments over there. And so this would connect people from the train or people in the West Concord area, not having to walk along treacherous territories of one kind or another, to take a gorgeous walk across the river and over to all of these properties. And it would connect those with the main concourse of Concord. So we can read the formality of this. Summary of the project is a continuation of the development of complete architectural plans, full structural and construction drawings that meet the requirement of Mass DOT, which is the Department of Transportation. Specification, estimates, and final permitting needed for construction of the Assabet River Pedestrian Bridge. We're receiving $410,000 we anticipate in matching funds, and where the request is for $300,000. Thank you. The next one that falls into this area is the concern that we've all faced all summer, which is the dilemma of not being able to swim in White Pond. Treatment and prevention of the cyanobacteria blooms in White Pond. And if you could go to the next site for us, please. Summary of the project: in-pond remediation in White Pond to mitigate cyanobacteria outbreaks using a pilot program that effectively mitigates toxic blooms apparent on the water's surface and sediment. Josh Galper has a question. Josh,
Hi.
We finished with the three. Please share your question.
Hi, thanks for recognizing me. I just wanted to say on this page that we have at least $5,000 in private funding contributions towards this project already.
Oh, wow. That's terrific to know, Josh. So it would be a $31,000 request now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, as people may know, with the CPC project, you can reduce the amount of money you're requesting, but you cannot increase it. Thank you very much. Mr. Pat. Pat. Up, disappeared. I thought you raised your hand, Mr. Pat, if you're still there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, thank you.
Here we go. I'm sorry, I had to find the microphone. I've had property at the north tip of White Pond for over 40 years. And because of the prevailing winds, the cyanobacteria and actually any boat that gets free or anything that ends up in front of our property. As a consequence, it's the right place to put this sediment collector. And I want to go on record as saying that we absolutely need this, want this, and even if it creates this big barrier right in front of my house, and at my pond frontage, it's what we need, and it's a scientifically thoughtful, environmentally responsible approach, and the request, I think, is more than reasonable.
Thank you very much for your comment. Do we have
Can
other?
you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, she said H. Pat because I'm Henry Patterson.
Okay, and
That's
your
just gonna-
address, Mr. Patterson,
I'm sorry?
your address, please.
109 Seymour Street.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Are there other comments from the public? Yes, Mr. Avakian.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you beautifully. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. I want to wholeheartedly support this request. White Pond is a beautiful pond, and it breaks my heart what's happening to it. This is not just amelioration, it's actually going to improve it. Please fund it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ivaki, and you reflect the sentiments of several who have written in. Mr. Collins or Miss Collins, I'm sorry, I don't know. D. Collins, please. Hello, D. Collins. It says D. Collins. Could you please identify yourself? Give us your address, your location. Katie,
I'm sorry, my mistake. My name is Diane Collins from 39 Seymour Street, and my family has owned the property since 1945, and I personally have spent 65 summers there. And it makes me so sad to see how little we can use the pond during the summer because of this algae that never used to happen for decades and generations. So please, now the request is down to $31,000 or $30,000. Please find a way to fund it and let us be able to use the pond as we always did and continue to have memories and just continue to build memories and use this beautiful resource as it's intended to be used.
thank you, Ms. Collins, so much. Katie Blair.
Yes, Kate Blair, 20 Darton Street. I also want to go on record as saying I support this project wholeheartedly. Please fund it. It would be wonderful to have the pond back the way
Your
it was.
address, please, Katie, I'm sorry.
20 Darton Street,
Okay.
Darton.
Could you repeat then your request, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that I support this project wholeheartedly and really hope that the committee votes for it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there other comments? Thank you so much for all who've, Emmett Biggin.
Hi, this is Frederique Began from 31 Fern Street. I'm the mom of Emmett Began, who's part of the Whites Pond youth group. And having watched my children grow up swimming in the pond, learning how to swim there, meeting friends there spontaneously, the joy of watching them fall in love with and learn about nature over the years has been such an incredible gift. And then watching that slip through their fingers, watching them invest their time and their energy advocating for this pond that they love so much has been both moving and heartbreaking that it's been needed. And so I want to add my voice and represent my family in asking that this really important work be funded. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you so much for your comment. Are there other comments? And if you could put your hand down, that would be great. Thank you very much. Are there other?
Apologies.
No, there's no ever. We're all, Zoom is always a challenge. No matter how experienced we all become. Okay, thank you. I should say, just for the public information, is that we are still investigating the whole notion of the legality of funding something that is not being forwarded by the town. And there have been very heart rendering and thoughtful letters written to us about the fact that this is a committee of the town. Why isn't it? Da, da, da. So we're still exploring that and trying to figure out with legal counsel, exactly what the CPC funding opportunities are. Certainly with no intention of doing anything but trying to make White Pond a successful place for all citizens. Thank you very much. Jerry, Mr. Frankel.
Yes, hi. Jerry Frankel, 132 Jenny Dugan Road. I want to point out that there are two aspects about this project that align, in my mind, perfectly with CPC objectives.
Yes.
The first is community. White Pond serves the community year-round, but especially during the summer when families gather there. As previous speakers have noted, many have grown up swimming there. Most of us, our children, learn to swim there. When the pond closes down, families are left to scramble for what will they do for recreational opportunities for their children. This is a very real problem. And this is an aspect of this project that reflects on the community. Then there's the aspect of preservation. This is directly about preserving the pond. The pond is ill, it is sick from years of neglect, and to preserve the pond, we need action. And this funding request is for that action. So to summarize, Community Preservation Committee, we have a project that directly affects the community and directly affects preservation. Thank you.
I could not agree more, and thank you so much, Mr. Frankel. So appreciate the passion that you brought to that comment. Are there other comments from the community? Catherine. Sorry, I don't have a last name, so I can just say Catherine. Hello, Catherine? Yoo-hoo. Are you there? I see your hand raised, Catherine, but I don't hear anything.
Unmute yourself.
You have to unmute yourself. You were unmuted a moment ago. Could you unmute yourself again, please, and speak up? Thank you. And identify yourself and your address, please. Well, we will come back to you if you figure out how to connect, Catherine, and thank you for trying. I see you've now muted yourself. So are there other comments about either the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail or the Assabet River Pedestrian Bridge that anybody would like to raise at this point?
If I may.
Yes, Nick Johnson, Mr. Johnson.
Hi, Nick Johnson, 38 Bolton Street. Just a general comment about the previous projects that you mentioned. When it comes to preservation, I'm hearing a lot of trees cut down from some of these projects. And I know we haven't said that explicitly. The only preservation that we're doing is a place for us to lay pavement for humans to go. But as far as preserving the environment, I disagree with the preservation in that sentence entirely. I
agree with preservation.
I love that we're trying to do something for the White Pond as well. But this will be a Band-Aid. And I do not think this committee is interested in preservation at all. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Wait, Nick, could you stay on the line for just a minute? I think preservation is central to our considerations, and it certainly has been central to my life. Would you be willing to explain why you think we're not interested in it?
You're changing the landscape. You're altering the trees by cutting them down to make fences. I mean, a lot of these projects take trees out, including the ones that's the one for the White Pond access.
Okay.
And I think that's being ignored. And if you want to use that word preservation, what are you preserving?
Well, it's recreation.
Well, that's an important comment, Nick, and we appreciate it very much. And thank you. And that reminder is critical. Beth Kelly.
Yep. Hi, Diane. This is Beth Kelly, 39 White Avenue. I'm also the co-chair of the White Pond Advisory Committee.
Right, I recognize your name.
Thank you. I need your email. I'll send you some information. But one of the things you mentioned earlier, Diane, was about the legality question. And I just wanted to point out, and on the website, excuse me.
Your dog is.
Sorry about that. Our new puppy who can't swim in the pond. Anyway, we did see some information from the town council, and I wanted to point out that our committee has the charge to, quote unquote, strategize on ways to obtain state, local, federal, or other resources to protect the White Pond ecosystem and provide this information or these strategies to the select board. And we have done that. We presented the vision document and talked about the APOD use and strategy for water quality testing to the select board. So I want to make sure everybody knows from the legal standpoint that is one of our charges, and that's why we're so hopeful that this this project gets approved. Thank
Yes,
you.
I thank you so much, and we are certainly looking into all of those details with great seriousness. Thank you very much. Mr. Avakian, again.
Yes, Aura Avakian, 501 Powder Mill Road. I just want to clarify something. A previous question mentioned trees being cut down.
Yes.
For White Pond. The requested funds for cyanobacteria treatment and prevention of cyanobacteria blooms does not involve cutting any trees down. Perhaps Mr. Johnson was referring to a different separate project that involves cutting some trees and putting a path in at the recreation area. But I want to separate those two different projects and make it clear that there's no trees being cut down for this project. Thank you.
We appreciate that distinction, and of course, you're absolutely right. You're not cutting down trees, you're trying to preserve a pond. Thank you very much. Are there other comments? Well, we appreciate these both the support and admonitions that are being offered very, very much. So let's just remind ourselves, this is a $36,000 request for in-pond remediation in White Pond to mitigate. Mr. Bates?
Go ahead. Hi, it's actually Susan. I'm on Tom's computer.
Hi, Susan. Nice to hear from you.
I'm the liaison for White Pond Advisory Committee, and I just wanted to voice my support for this.
Susan is on the select board and has a long interest in this project. Go ahead, Susan. Sorry.
I just wanted to voice my support for this because I think it's really pretty short money for something that has shown a tactic that has shown a lot of progress or positive results for the work that it's done for the pond so far. And then understand there are letters in the file from other towns who have used it. So when we look at the scope of the asks for CPC funds, many of them are in the hundreds of thousands or even $1 million. And I think that it's this money will be administered by Natural Resources. And I think it's worthy of consideration given the state of the pond and the sort of modest cost for this project.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are there other comments? Catherine, are you now able to communicate with us, Catherine? I think not, but we'll keep watching for you. Don't get discouraged. Okay, so now there's a one in the recreation. One project, a total request of 75. Oh, Catherine, you're back. Are you able to communicate now? No, okay, let's go on. Recreation, one project, total requested $75,000. Thank you, Heather. The recreation facilities strategic plan consultant. There was a recreation strategic plan quite a while ago. We now have a new director of recreation facilities, and the attempt is to look across the recreation facilities and to try to develop a plan for how to move forward and work productively to bring a collaborative sensibility for facilities strategic planning and to hire a planning consultant. Could we please have the next slide? Hire a qualified consultant firm to update the town's recreation facilities strategic plan. The plan that we produce will provide the town with a roadmap that prioritizes and guides annual capital project planning through a lens of strategic, purposeful, and prioritized needs and actions. I just thank you very much. And I just want to compliment whoever wrote this, because you see that little comma after purposeful. That's the Oxford comma, and I love it. So thank you very much, whoever used the Oxford comma. I noticed in the Right Tavern application, well, of course, they were fighting the bloody British. And so they didn't use the Oxford comma, but there has to be some humor in all this, right? Some grammatical humor. Okay, thank you very much. And the next one. Oh, any comments on the recreational facilities strategic plan? Besides the Oxford comma. Okay, thank you, Heather. Now, this is the administration costs, which we have supported every year, a total of $40,000. This is funding for staff support, legal, technical, and consulting services, supplies and associated administrative requirements, including legal ads, which we have to, in fact, place in newspapers to the degree that we have a newspaper, legal ads, copying, et cetera, and funding to purchase CPA signage, which is critical because all around town, this indicates to the citizens of Concord where CPA funding is being used. Do I hear any questions or comments about this? I think I would like to say just personally, and I'm sure I speak for our committee, that Heather Gill is a brilliant supporter of all that we do. And we are grateful every day, Heather, for the work. Okay. So now we're going to go backwards. We're going to look in quite detailed attention to the Assabet River. Can you pull that one up for us, please? While Heather is organizing that, let me say once again that we received 41 or more letters addressing concerns that citizens and neighbors have. You had it a second ago, Las. There you go. For the Assabet River bluff preservation, housing and land acquisition. I'm going to try to summarize the commentary from those 41 letters for those of you who have not had an opportunity to spend your day reading them. I'm not going to touch on every detail of all of these very thoughtful letters we've received, but let me make a few quick comments. The first is that the Upland Road access is considered by many neighbors a dangerous one. And we're going to see a presentation by Marcia in a moment. Rasmussen, that will give us a more detailed sensibility for what her and the town planning committee's sensibility about the use of this land might be. The second thing is a concern about neighborhood engagement and neighborhood involvement, and a sense that the neighbors have not been well informed, have not been included, and have felt, for one reason or another, not really fully a part of the discourse. Of course, they can be on an ongoing basis after this, and we're grateful to have all of them here tonight. The third thing is strong concerns about the environment. Whether you're looking at it in the short term about the paths that go through this land and the access to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, or whether we're thinking about just our general concern about the climate and its future, and that every tree uses its space and needs its space to make this a healthy environment. That, as Mr. Johnson reminded us a minute ago, any tree removed is in many ways a blow to our collective health. And that certainly is something that people have stated. There's also the sensibility that this is a particularly, again, an assault on West Concord. Why is it that West Concord has to carry this burden when in fact other parts of the town have vast territories that are open space, but that West Concord's space is being in some ways required to be divided. Next, I think, and second to last of what I'm going to mention is that the biomap 2 core habitat map seems to suggest a different use of this land than that so far suggested by the town. And the final concern, I think, is one that says, could we not use there, and this is strongly expressed by almost everyone who wrote, support for affordable housing, not in any way hostility to affordable housing, but could we not cluster it in a different spot on this property? And in order to preserve the essential openness of that property. Now, I know I've not in any way expressed all of the concerns of citizens in Concord about this land, but I think that's a fairly fair, and I'm sure others will correct me as we go forward, a fairly fair generalization. I want particularly, and this is very personal, I want to thank Ursula Ziegler. If you have a chance to go in and read her letter, it's poetry in action as she talks about why this land is so important. And if you have a chance to read Gregory McGuire's information, is very detailed and very helpful. Marcia, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, can you?
Thank you, Diane. Marisa Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management for the Town of Concord. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this updated information. The initial conversations that we've had about acquiring the land began in earnest over the summer. And we heard from the Sudbury Valley trustees, from the Concord Land Conservation Trust, and we did outreach to the Concord Housing Development Corporation to apply to the Community Preservation Committee during your usual timeframe so that this wouldn't come in at the last minute or come out of sequence, that you would know, that you would have the elephant in the room, that this land acquisition always requires a significant amount of funding. And it's taken us some time to put everything together. So if you'll bear with me, Heather, I sent you a presentation. If you could put that up, please. And I'd like to make people aware that there are 3 documents that have been added to the CPC webpage as of yesterday, I believe: the wetland resources map, the upland fact sheet, and a 6-lot conceptual subdivision plan, which was used as the basis for an appraisal. But I'll talk to that through this presentation. Next slide, please.
I should have mentioned that, Marcia. Thank you very much.
So this is a partnership between open space and affordable housing interests. And while the town prepared and submitted the application, the effort involved the Concord Housing Development Corporation, Concord Land Conservation Trust, Sudbury Valley trustees, and the town of Concord. So it's not just the town promoting this. Next slide, please. Neither the town nor CHDC is in the position to construct community housing due to the construction costs that we have with state procurement requirements and prevailing wage requirements. So we're looking at conserving a significant open space area along the Assabet River while providing the public access to those trails that have been created and to protect what is naturally protected under the Rivers and Wetlands Protection Acts, but go beyond that. And then the concept of land banking, of setting aside the buildable portion of the land and through a public process controlling the scale, density, and the design of housing, which would include community housing units with eventual issuance of an RFP for development. And that's where we're thinking that neither the town nor CHDC can really construct community housing because we have state procurement procedures and prevailing wage requirements that would make it cost prohibitive to build the housing. So we would search for, after working with the neighborhood to define that scale, density, and design, and even sustainability measures of a PRD, issue a request for proposals from contractors and housing groups to permit and construct the housing. So it would be similar in process that was undertaken by the CHDC as they promoted the Junction Village piece of land some time ago. Next slide, please. So where have we been and what have we been doing? The appraisal of the 6-lot subdivision plan, that conceptual plan, affirms the value of the property and supports the asking price of the owners of $2.8 million. There is already protected by riverfront and wetlands regulations 172,800 square feet of land. That's a significant piece of land. An acre is 42,560 square feet. So we're talking about over 4 acres. Over 4 acres? That's not possible. a significant portion is being protected. And then we have open space and housing groups working together who have defined additional open space to be protected and potential communities housing scenarios. And then we have also identified sources of funding for acquisition. Next slide, please. So this was the 6-lot conceptual subdivision plan that I showed you back on November 9th. It was prepared for appraisal purposes, but affirms that asking price. This would be the plan that a developer would bring to the planning board, and it could be designed in compliance with our subdivision rules and regulations. And if it's met all those regulations, the planning board would be in a position to approve it. They could not deny it. There are 2 lots shown that encroach on that riverfront area. One contains approximately 21,000 square feet outside of the riverfront. So that's a developable lot. And that's that, if you count from where the house is on Old Marlborough Road, that's the 4th house around that cul-de-sac. That one, thank you. That 5th lot, which has even more riverfront, has at least 5,400 square feet of land outside of the riverfront. And the remaining land, 52,600 square feet, there's a provision under the Rivers Protection Act that allows 10% or 5,260 square feet to be altered. So there's about 10,000 square feet that could be used for a building lot. So this too is a sufficient lot for a 5-bedroom house, driveway, septic system, and garage. And this plan shows that all of the land is in private ownership, remains in private ownership. Next slide. So when land becomes available, the best way to have any say in how it is developed is by owning it. So we began with the basic PRD that is allowed under zoning bylaw. It's a special permit process. It goes through a fairly rigorous process, but there is a calculation that is done to allow for what is the basic density. And in this case, if you took out the property at 406 Old Bedford Road, the yield is 10 acres. So this plan illustrates what a developer might propose under a standard planned residential development scenario. The unit sizes that we've used are based on the footprints of the Riverwalk development over on Main Street near Damon Mill. So we felt that that was an appropriate footprint because of the high visibility and comments that we've heard about that project in the past. Next slide, please. So in response to interests in protecting more of the upland portion of the property, the number of new units was reduced to 7. So this plan represents 7 new housing units and with detached garages plus 2 existing units at 406 Old Marlborough Road. The layout uses a cul-de-sac or circular driveway, which makes it easier for emergency response vehicles. So we wanted to show that it's possible to put in a circular cul-de-sac. Next slide. And then this is a further refined PRD scenario. The number of new units is further reduced to 6 new units. 2 of them are in duplexes, and then there are garage units with the existing house remaining at 406 Old Marlborough Road. In this case, we've used a Y intersection, so we further protected the open space. Next slide. So this is a summary of the iterative process that we've gone through working with the open space and the housing interest to see where the balance was. So we started with the 6-lot subdivision where there's no public access and no open space protection other than what is currently allowed under riverfront and wetlands. We use the basic PRD, which is 10 new units and 2 existing. There is public access and 181,000 square feet of open space protected. And then the reduced PRD number 1, the 7 new units and 2 existing, has public access and an additional 10,000 square feet of open space protected. And then further reduced is 6 new units and 2 existing, with 212,000 square feet of open space protected. So from here, let's move on to the next slide, please. So we've been looking at numbers and talking with representatives from the Concord Land Conservation Trust and Sudbury Valley Trustees and Concord Housing Development Corporation. And each of these groups, if this looks like it's going to go forward or have the support of the Community Preservation Committee, they will meet with their respective boards to discuss how they go about managing all of the fundraising opportunities here. So that first item should read just the 5% deposit, and we are splitting it between housing and open space. $140,000 is needed, and that is fully refundable through a purchase and sale if we're unable to raise the funds by July 1st of 2022. Our CPA request for housing is for $500,000, so that goes toward that land acquisition for the developable portion of the property, and an additional $500,000 that would go toward the preservation of the open space that's above and beyond what the riverfront and wetlands provides. And then we would look to existing town housing funds that have been allocated from free cash in prior years from town meeting. There's approximately $700,000 that is available there. We would have to go through the Affordable Housing Trust or the Select Board to get those funds allocated to this project. Then we would seek an additional $500,000 at the 2022 town meeting from free cash. We're also asking the Concord Housing Foundation to provide a fundraising in the amount of $100,000 and open space fundraising in the amount of $450,000, so that the total project is $2.9 million. The additional $100,000 would be used for activities such as doing a complete survey of the property, identifying and surveying in the wetlands, and making sure that the riverfront, all of that information is correct, as well as the legal piece steps moving forward. So if we could have the next slide, please. So the process from here would be that CHDC would work toward putting together a purchase and sale or a contract to purchase the land by the end of 2021. This may or may not happen given all of the different pieces that have to be put in place from CLCT, SVT, and the town's Affordable Housing Trust or Select Board. But we also hope to gain support for CPC funding and begin fundraising over the next 6 to 7 months. And then we would need the votes of the annual town meeting for the full funding from community preservation of $1 million with free cash article for affordable housing of $500,000, and then proceed to purchase if town meeting approves and fundraising is successful. And then once CHDC has purchased the land, we would define the open space and continue the public process to define community housing development and put together an RFP for development. And that's my update for the CPC. We will have this posted tomorrow so people can review it and provide any additional questions or comments.
Marcia, I think I speak for the committee and for the community that the specificity of this and the thoughtfulness is much appreciated. What questions do people have? I suspect there might be many. So can you raise your hand so that we can call on you and hear your thoughts?
Diane, if I could add that I believe there are a number of people here. Krista Collins that was on earlier, Polly Reeves, she's with the Concord Land Conservation Trust. Krista's with Sudbury Valley Trustees. I believe Lee Smith is here for the Concord Housing Development Corporation, and Liz Rust, who has been working with us as well, and Delia Kay from the Concord Natural Resources Division. So if I can't answer, perhaps one of them would be willing to fill in.
A formidable gathering indeed. Mary Hardman, you have a question. You want to start us off?
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Marcia. That was a great presentation. Again, my name is Mary Hartman. I live at 16 Concord Green. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, but I'm speaking for myself. This land is a beautiful piece of land. I used to walk there frequently with my dog before access was kind of limited because of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So I think anything we can do to preserve this land would be a great idea. The other thing I'm really happy to see is that there's a partnership between the people who want open space and the people who want affordable housing. Some people think that in town we don't have cooperation between those groups, and this is evidence where we do. As far as what we actually put there, if we don't take ownership of this land now, we won't have a say. As Marcia pointed out, we won't have a say in what gets built there. So by taking ownership now, we can get more community input to exactly what we build there. So I think this is I know it's a big ask, but I think it's a good use of our money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, very much. John, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, John, but last name, but could you identify yourself and where you live, please?
Yeah, I'll start off. John Richardson, 13 South Meadow Ridge. I live in a community of elderly residents. We have about 21 homes here. And I just want to reiterate our opposition to this project if it includes access onto Old Marlborough Road. I think not enough attention has been paid to the fact that the little house that's there that has 2 units empties directly in front of the bike trail and the crosswalk, and we have a huge amount of traffic going back and forth. Young kids, biking families, everything. And to add anything there is going to be very, very dangerous down the road. I'm afraid that means Upland Road is the normal historic access point for this lot. If I understand how the lot lines are drawn, there's a 50-foot right-of-way that was reserved there, and presumably that was for access. And I think that should be respected. Otherwise, I go back to my original point. I think the best use of this land would be open space and raise the money completely to just do that. And then we wouldn't have to worry about access.
Thank you very much. Another comment from anybody in the public, please. You raise your hand, then, Mr. Feely.
Yes, Rich Feely, 347 Lexington Road. I'm president of the Concord Housing Foundation, but these comments are not of the foundation, although we are generally very supportive of the idea of using part of this land for housing. I sincerely hope we can do that. And the more money that comes from the Affordable Housing Trust or affordable housing, the more units I hope we get. But I do hope that people look at the trade-off between the size of the units and the cost. I think that we could have more and smaller units, which could be closer to affordable for people who work in this town or people on a retirement income. I think it doesn't make sense to preserve all of this land. It's great the river valley itself is protected. The higher land, I think we need to look at that and better several small units than 6 4,000 square foot houses, which is what happens if we don't buy it. But if we're going to use that much housing money, I would like to see at least the preservation of the 2 units that are there and 6 to 8 small units on the buildable portion of land. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gary Kleiman.
Hi there. Thanks, Gary Kleiman, 57 Central Street. I'm actually a member of the NRC, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the NRC. I just had a question. I think it was really helpful and illuminating to see Marcia's slide of the funding and the funding contributions that amount to $2.9 million. But since we're going above the purchase price, it doesn't stop there, right? And I'm wondering if there's a plan for, there would be significant additional fundraising required for actual construction and on the housing side. And in addition, I suppose some money for operations and maintenance on the land preservation conservation side, right? So there perhaps additional fundraising needed. And I wonder if there's a plan or a thought for that.
Thank you, Gary. Marcia?
Do you, okay, I was going to say, this would be working with the community is in defining what we would like to see built. It would be put out as a request for proposals. And then a developer would purchase the land. I believe the proceeds, we could decide at that point in time how much of the proceeds might be used to develop the housing or what might be returned to the Affordable Housing Trust or to the town or to whichever. So I think that's part of the conversation that we need to continue and try to define before we get to town meeting and have that at least a plan in mind. Building housing right now is incredibly high because we're seeing supply chain issues, labor shortages, and we've observed that there's been an increase in costs about 2% each month. So it's really daunting to think about providing for construction at this point in time, which is why that concept of land banking, working with the community and defining the project and then moving forward with the request for proposals and getting groups that do this kind of development on a regular basis. We have done this for the CHDC has done this for Junction Village and has done it for a couple of the projects over on Elm Street. So I think that that's how it would unfold in terms of construction.
Gary, does that answer the questions you have, or does that address your concerns?
No, that's perfect. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Clarified.
Before we call on other people, and there's several important hands raised, I wanted to say that some of you have requested that the CPC put conditions on the securing of this property. And I want you to know that we can find nothing right now. Heather and I have spent a long time culling the various innuendos of the CPC rules that address this. So we have written to Stuart Saganor, who is the administrator and the head of the coalition, to ask him about whether should we choose to and vote to spend all $1 million on this, which is a little bit more than half of the amount of money we have, or close to half of the money we have. If we were to do this, can we put any kind of conditions on that security? For instance, that only so many houses could be built, or that they have to be built in a certain way. And Mr. Feely's comment about how, where they might be built and how they might be built. I mean, there are many considerations, and we're trying to figure this out right now. So please be patient with us as we sort this out.
Diane, if I may, I would hope that through a community process that we might have over the next 6 to 7 months, we might be able to provide you with that level of support or level of assurance, so that you don't necessarily need to place conditions to the degree that you might be thinking.
Marcia, thank you so much. And you've already been so responsive to what you've been hearing from the community. And I think I speak for the committee that I'm very grateful for that, and impressed, incidentally. So thank you. John, you have your hand up again? I think not. Maybe you just didn't put your hand down. Okay, Dory, good evening, Dory.
Yes, good evening. I have a couple of questions.
Dory, could you give your name and your address, please?
I apologize. Dory Keogh, 51 MacArthur Road. I am not in a butter. I am in favor of affordable housing and have worked on that for years. But I think that it's so good that Marcia was able to present at least a plan or outlines of several plans tonight. That's the first time that anyone has seen those or heard of those. I think that there's much that needs to be done within the next month before you make your decision about whether you're going to support this project or not. So I would certainly advocate that there be more informal meetings where the neighbors could have some input into what their concerns might be. I'm interested in the fact, and I understand with real estate prices and construction prices being so changeable, how anybody can predict? No one can. But at the same time, I think that there needs to be a better idea of whether this is what is really envisioned here and what are the possibles. So I would really urge the CPC to put this as making a decision on this at the very end before they have to do so And that before that, that there be many, many, many opportunities to involve the neighbors. I am not a neighbor. If I were a neighbor, I would be really very concerned. And I think a number of people have supported this project, but if it were in their backyard, they might not be quite so supportive, especially when it's so unknown. So I would like a lot more information and a lot of opportunities for those who are going to be so affected to have input before, well before the January deadline for you all. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory, so much. I can say that of the 41 letters that I've read, so many of them have been incredibly supportive about the securing of this land by the CPC. The question is then how that land is used, and Marcia's efforts in working with the neighbors, working with us is invaluable. Scott Richardson, Mr. Richardson.
Scott Richardson, 260 Elsinore Street. I'm intrigued at the notion of having this land be preserved in perpetuity. And if there's been any discussion of that, clearly from an economic perspective, you wouldn't be getting the benefit of the revenue associated with the PRD. On the other hand, you wouldn't have any of the costs. And the costs are going to be significant, right? You mentioned that construction goes up, 2% every month. So it seems to me that developing it is going to cost money, whereas preserving it, well, that's just basically maintaining what's there. And the value of maintaining this as green space, from an environmental perspective, I think seems pretty interesting. And then also, I don't know if you put 6 or 7 units there with kids, I don't know what that does to Thoreau. I guess you could always redistrict things a little bit, but at some point, it seems to me we're going to have to stop carving out new land or carving from virgin land for development and really only put housing where there's already concrete or already existing housing. So I just wondered if anyone has considered a plan like that or if there's any been discussion about it. Thank you.
Scott, thank you so much. I think one of the problems, of course, is if it's going to be owned by the Concord Housing Development Corporation, it is unlikely that they would want to hold this land in abeyance for in perpetuity. But of course, that could be their decision. But I thank you for that comment very much, and we'll hear from them. I presume.
I can understand it.
Yeah. Sarah Murphy, Miss Murphy. Hello, Ms. Murphy.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. My name is Sarah Murphy, and my husband Bill and I live right next to 406. We're in the Small White Cape, 368 Old Marlborough Road. So we are a real close abutter to the property. This is our backyard. We moved here just right as COVID started to strike. And so we haven't met a lot of people in the community due to everything. But I grew up in Concord and spent my entire childhood here. So returning to this area has been very, very special to me. I remember when my house was built. So I look at, my family and I look at this backwoods area, knowing full well when we bought our house that it was owned privately and that the day could come when it would in fact go for sale. But the thing that strikes me and that I think is so important about Concord as a community and why I value living here and where I come from with an historical knowledge of this town is that Concord has put its money where its mouth is in terms of providing conservation land for the community, for anybody who wants to come in to this community. It is unique beyond compare. And, to put affordable housing or any housing at all in this woods, this beautiful, beautiful woods that is abuts the wetlands and that has the bridge going across that the town is, whoever did such a great job in creating with the bench. And here we are 20 miles outside of Boston, and we have this right here. This is valuable, and this is what makes Concord special. I just can't stress it enough. My family and I over Thanksgiving walked into that woods, and there are hawks and the wildlife. I mean, I can't even get into the ecology of the whole dynamic of it all. I'll stop here, but I just want to say that as a second time now resident of Concord, I can't stress strongly enough how incredible it was for me to return to this community and to recognize that so much hadn't changed. It's a remarkable place. And I hope that the committee, I hope that the town, I hope that the residents, and I hope that everybody who's considering what to change about something that can never be changed back, is done with extreme care.
Sarah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for that passionate testimony. Karen Smith. Ms. Smith.
Oh, so I'm actually very glad that we have.
Identify yourself, please, in your street before you start. Thank you.
Karen Smith, Upland Road. So I'm very glad that we have finally seen the concept design document. This has been talked about for several months, so it's good to finally see that, and to see that it had, in fact, has several alternative layouts, for housing. I really have one question and a follow-up point. So my question is, what is the relevance of these design options? So specifically, in what way do they influence whether or not this project is funded? I mean, do one of these designs actually have to be developed? And I have a concern because, as you've noted, there's tremendous support for the town acquiring this land. And I think the majority of support is for maintaining a significant amount of open space. I think there is also consistent support for affordable housing, but I think if you were to pay careful attention to the letters that were submitted, I think the numbers that you see represented there probably are 4 units built on the old Marlborough parcel, maybe 6. None of the, so my concern is none of the designs that we saw are in the realm of what the community has said they would like to see there. Hence, I personally have anxiety about the statements that the community will be involved in the creation of a design, because we have not been involved. We've expressed our opinion, and yet the design documents that we see ignore those opinions.
Thank you very much. I think that not all of the letters that we've received, because I've read them all and each of them quite carefully, have express precisely what you're saying, but many of them do. Thank you very much.
Diane, if I may respond to her first question, though, about what is the relevance of the design options. The funding process that I outlined is based on the maximum open space that was shown in that final plan that had the 6 units. The units could be smaller, they could be duplexes, they could be tiny houses. So having it 6 to 8 units on that smaller piece of land or whatever development, that's where the group, CHDC, Sudbury Valley Trustees, Concord Land Conservation Trust, and the town felt comfortable presenting as an option for development and protection of open space. The majority of the funds that we're seeking come from affordable housing resources. We're looking at 1.9 million for affordable housing and 1 million from open space. So that's part of it. It's a little bit of a return on investment, and it's looking at how do you package something that will be desirable for a group to move forward with construction. So that's the basis for the outlined funding.
Thank you very much, Marcia. I don't know, Kathleen, your last name, but I see you're on an iPhone, and if you'd like to speak, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Diane, for recognizing me. My name's Katie Sears. I live at 12 South Meadow Ridge, right next to John Richardson. I fully agree with what Sarah just said. I think the way she expressed herself is exactly my thinking and what I expressed in a letter to the planning, the town manager, and the select board. And I fully support the town purchasing this land. I would hate for a developer to get their hands on it, and I think we would lose control. I fully support open space. I'm hoping that most of the land will be used for open space. I also support affordable housing, but on the existing lots. I agree with my neighbor John that if there is an access road on Old Marlboro or on Upland, I think it would cause huge traffic issues and it would really be a danger to the community. You have 21 units in our development up the hill. Our access road is exactly kitty corner to the trail crossway and also to 406 Old Marlboro Road. You also have the entrance to Upland Road, which is a very popular cut-through road. You have traffic on Old Marlboro Road, which comes very quickly. I know even crossing the bottom of South Meadow Ridge to the trail is very dangerous for everybody who walks down South Meadow Ridge. Those cars come around the corner very quickly, and I've seen near accidents even within the trail crossway there. I know they put in I think their plans to put in an automatic light so that it's safer. Sometimes people don't push the light, and I've just seen some very dangerous situations there. I think to have an entrance right next to the trail crossway is just unbelievably unprudent, and I just think it would be a huge danger to the surrounding area. So I guess to summarize, I support the town purchasing this. I support the open space. I do not support 6 units, 8 units. I think that's too much. And I think when you're talking about access roads in this area, it's going to cause a huge problem and a danger to those that use the trail and people in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's try to hear, and I thank you so much. Let's try to hear new comments we've not heard, thoughts we've not heard about the use of this land or thoughts about this land. Sarah, you've already spoken, so I'm going to go to Beverly Ridpath for a minute. I'll come back to you, Sarah, with time, okay?
Yes, actually, Beverly Bryant in terms of the
I'm
town.
sorry, Beverly Ridpath, I apologize. I apologize, go ahead.
175 Conant Street. I don't know whether this is new. I'm not totally understanding funding and housing and so forth. So this is a question. It seems as if you go to the housing authority to request money and then you get a pledge, and then you say you can't find money because you've got the pledge from the housing authority, it's sort of like one thing seems to be, at some point a decision was made to go that route. And I just wondered whether funds were ever asked of Concord Land Trust, Sudbury Valley trustees, whether for the entire amount of this land for open space, was that ever requested? Was that money ever available from those organizations to preserve the entire amount? Were those questions ever asked? Was that ever planned?
Beverly,
very good question, Marcia. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that the town is required to invite affordable housing groups to any conversation about land acquisition. And so we felt that this was an opportune time to work together with open space advocates as well as affordable housing advocates to bring the project forward unified rather than having to try to squeeze something in at the last minute. So I can't speak for the Sudbury Valley trustees or the Concord Land Conservation Trust about their funding sources, but from the town's perspective, no, we did not look at this as a solely affordable housing or open space acquisition.
Thank you. I see that Krista Collins from the Sudbury Valley Trustees has her hand raised. So Krista, perhaps you, Ms. Collins, you might address this if you would. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I really appreciate all the time and effort that's been put into this by town staff and volunteers and all the interest that's been shown from the neighborhood and beyond. So really, as someone who's worked to protect open space for over 20 years, it thrills me to hear so many people expressing interest in seeing the whole thing preserved. For SVT, we're a regional land trust, so we typically wouldn't be involved in a project of this size. For some context, I'm working on a 100-acre property a little bit west of here for less than half of what we're talking about for this piece of property. So the reason we got involved in this one is because we felt that this property does have some regional significance because it's been identified by the River Stewardship Council as a priority property along the wild and scenic sections of the Aspet River because of the biomap habitat, because of the proximity to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. But, I think when we first learned the price tag for this piece of property, 8 acres, our heart sank a little bit because it seemed pretty unattainable for just an open space purchase. I should say too, I'm also a West Concord resident. So wearing my Concord resident hat, I do appreciate the need for affordable housing in the community. And I think we viewed it as a way to sort of balance those interests and spread the cost out among multiple community interests. So, but again, I really appreciate everybody's interest in seeing as much of this land protected as possible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sue and Jay Beatty and Copeland. Sue and Jay Beatty Copeland. Thank you. Hello. I've read some of your.
Hi. My name is Jay Copeland. I live at 9 Shirley Street. And first, I just want to express my support for this funding proposal. I see it as a unique opportunity that could easily slip through our fingers and be lost, and we would lose any kind of voice and control other than going through like the planning board dealing with a developer, which is a situation I really don't think any of us wants to see happen. Moreover, I would just add that I think that the traffic issues that are raised are very real and very concerning to everyone. But let's remember something. If nothing at all happened here, we would still have horrible traffic. The traffic problems are endemic to our current situation in terms of volume of cars, poor infrastructure, and a whole host of things that this project is not going to have more than a tiny marginal effect on. If we want to address the traffic issues in this particular area, this project is probably the best vehicle we have to raise those issues in a meaningful way and gather community support around a solution. But if a developer moves in here and just decides he's going to build a subdivision, which is what the DiGiovanni Family Trust would probably do if the town doesn't do anything, we're not going to be talking about traffic. We're going to be arguing about planning board issues, and it's probably a big development of land that will end up being denied access to the citizens, and it just will be a very bad outcome for all of us. So I see this combined effort of doing housing and open space preservation as not necessarily the best possible solution, the one that would preserve all the land, but I don't see that as realistic. And I see the combined effort where we bring these different interests together as really being the best opportunity for providing the most agreeable situation for the most people and for the town. And of course, I would love to see the whole thing preserved, but I don't think that's realistic given the cost and the available money that's out there.
Well, Jay, thank you so much. And I think that you reflect the sentiments of many, and I really appreciate that. We'll take one last comment before we close the public hearing. I don't know who NK is, but You can
Are you there?
identify yourself, please, and
Are
your
you
name
there?
and address.
Oh, I can hear
NK.
Hi, hello. I'm sorry. My name's Nancy Kerr. I'm at 25 Upland Road.
Okay.
I forgot. I only have those initials on there. Anyway, I would just like to say that I think what Scott Richardson said is that, you know, housing goes where you already have streets and you already have concrete, and, you know, developing a forest into making it housing is just counterintuitive to anyone, I think, who lives in Concord. The developers that are doing this are coming from the outside, trying to make money off a beautiful town. And the reason people want to move here is because we have open space and we have a beautiful community. And I think that, I mean, I understand that housing is giving some money. Maybe we need to look at some other funding, some other sources of from people who want to preserve more open space. I don't think, you know, if we have so much percentage coming from housing that they feel like they can lean on it and put up a lot of housing, then that doesn't feel right. So I don't know where to go with that, but I think putting more housing on that 406 property, I mean, that's a pretty big piece of property. You could fit more than a 2-family on that house, on that lot rather. And
thank you, Nancy. That is a sentiment that has been reflected by several in the letters. I would urge you all to read the letters if you have the time that are on our website. Now, I've done something rather atraditional tonight in that I've not asked for the committee commentary on each of these projects because we will have time to have such deliberations. And I knew there was a great deal of interest in the community to have discussion. I would like to close the public meeting now. We will have an opportunity as a committee to discuss these projects on an ongoing basis. So may I hear a motion to close the public hearing, please, from our committee?
Make a motion to close the public meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Just clarifying, it's the public hearing, not the public meeting.
Sorry, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. And Tom, you second that. So let's go around. Paul?
Yes, aye.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Charles? Let's see, Charles, you're muted, so we'll need to wait till you unmute. He's saying aye, he's waving at us. Nancy?
Aye.
Burton?
Yes.
Thank you, and I as well. So the public hearing is now closed. Thank you very much.
I also vote yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. John, where are you? Oh, you're behind that waterfall. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Okay, John, there you are. Thank you. I want to thank the many citizens who have participated in this discourse and those who have supported these conversations. It's much appreciated by our committee. We had over 87 people here tonight to hear this discussion. So there clearly is much citizen involvement and concern. I also want to thank Marcia and Liz Rust, who's here, and others who are and Delia, who are part of our citizen, our government, to help us think about and address these concerns. All right, may I hear now from our committee about just considerations and reactions to some of what we heard tonight before we go on to a discussion of the available funding. Paul, you want to start? Go ahead.
Yeah, I really thought that the clarification of the Aspet Bluff project was really excellent. It doesn't mean everybody supports it, but I think the clarity that Marcia brought to it, the evaluation of the options, where we are, I mean, it's a way that we as a committee can move forward and deliberating on something fairly specific. Doesn't mean it's final, but I think it really helps us out a lot.
Thank you, Paul, very much. Other comments from members of the committee? Peter.
Yes, I just had a couple of observations about the White Pond project.
Yes.
And I'm a little perplexed. I looked at the materials on the website. I still don't understand if there's support from the NRC for the project. And also, it's still not clear to me whether there is a process whereby funding can be received. um, if based on, by the White Pond Advisory Committee themselves in terms of affecting and implementing the project itself. Having said that, I was also very taken by the letter from the town of Newbury.
Yes.
This approach works.
Yeah.
And they had a very, very similar situation. They've had a very similar or a very positive outcome. And this is a treasure, for the town. And it would be wonderful if we could figure out a way to implement this so it's sustainable.
Peter, thank you so much. Delia, are you willing or can you comment on this? I see you're still with us. Delia Kay, are you, yeah, where are you? You just disappeared. Oh,
Hi, Diane, I'm here.
You are. Hi,
I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask this question of. This application was submitted without a town signature, so I can certainly say that the town has been very excited and is optimistic about the APOD pilot results. We've been working with John Higgins since he approached Susan Rask in the summer. And we're very excited about it, but we need to get a little bit better handle on what the budget looks like. And Marcia, I don't know if you have any thoughts that you want to add to that, but I'm not really in a position to support an application that was submitted without a town manager signature.
And we have not received any delegation to actually work with the White Pond Advisory Committee. So that's where we're at a bit of a unable to respond or answer the question because the town manager is responsible for town staff, and we haven't had no indication. He did not sign the application, and we've had no indication from him that we are tasked with providing the support. There are multiple entities that might. We have Concord Public Works, Board of Health, Natural Resources, and Recreation are all interested and involved in White Pond to some degree. And so I think it needs to go back to the town manager to find out where and what that support looks like.
Thank you for that clarification, because there has been some puzzlement, I believe, on the committee. And perhaps I see Josh Galper's hand raised. And right now this is a committee discussion. I'm happy to call on you in a minute, Mr. Galper, but I would hope that you've heard that, and that perhaps some sort of approach to the appropriate authorities is a question of funding and managing the funding. And many have said, but this is very little funding in comparison to some of the other requests, but that doesn't make the process insignificant. And Peter's commentary, I think, is brilliant. I mean, it's absolutely balanced and important. So let us hope that we can find a way to deal with this. Peter, does that answer some of your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sarah.
Thank you. I'd just like to go back and make a comment about the Assabet River preservation and housing. A few people suggested that they would be very interested in having the housing if it was on the land of the existing plot. And I don't know if that would be then using the main road as the entry to the houses and not actually require an extra road put in. And Marsha, I'm not necessarily asking you to comment, but I would like to understand at some point if that has been thought out and drawn up, if it is a possibility just to use that plot of land, where there's existing property now.
Marsha, would you like to address that?
If I may, we've looked at the rear portion of that property, which is where the septic field is located, and we're going to need to move the septic field if we were to put the driveway in as it's been shown. So I think there's a couple of steps along the way, taking this information into consideration, but also looking at the what we do with wastewater and how we might, I think we need a traffic study to determine which is the better entrance. I think that is probably something that would happen down the road. If we don't, with the additional $100,000, we may be able to do a portion of that work prior to town meeting, but it might be something that is done after land acquisition, just so that we can be certain of the right access drive.
Entrance and egress it seems to be a divided issue. What we heard tonight.
But not just the access drive, but whether you could have, say, only 4 units or something, as was suggested. Just interested in that option.
Yeah, I think that bears looking at further. I think 4 is too few, but I certainly would be willing to take into consideration better utilization of the existing developed parcel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Paul.
Yeah, I want to go back just very quickly to the White Pond application. First, I want to say that I speak for myself and maybe for others on the committee that we realize that White Pond needs attention. And I'll even say that I think this mitigation is part of the solution. I don't think it's the entire solution to the pond, but my comments go back to the process a little bit. 2 things that haven't been mentioned that have come up in some of the documents. One from the town of Newbury. I think they're very supportive, but they also mentioned that Dr. Higgins has National Science Foundation support. So I'd like to know how our support, potential support for Dr. Higgins through the CPC kind of relates to his ongoing funding and whether he could do this without our funding. I don't know what the answer is, but town of Newbury, the document brought that up. The second part came from the finance department. We asked the question about whether this funding could go to the committee and whether it could be a sole source procurement. And I think their determination was under certain circumstances below $50,000, this could be sole source, but if and only if there's no other source for this. And so I do think there is a clarification needed in the application, whether this is the only source. There has to be some sole source justification for this. It may be very easy to get that, but I think that's another process question that came up in the information we got from the finance department.
Thank you so much, Paul. There's also a letter. It wasn't dated, unfortunately. It was written to Heather, but I received some clarification on this from our legal counsel. And it was dated November 23rd, I believe at 6:30 in the evening from Mina. And he said that he would not recommend funding a committee. So I think there's a lot more clarification and discussion that's going to be important for us to pursue as we go forward. Thank you very much. Burton.
Thank you, Diane. I wanted to speak about the Aspet Bluffs project. And I think, like you, I've gone through and I read all the letters, and I think I noticed a little bit of a change in what some of the comments were as time passed, and that uniformly every letter that we received, with maybe the possible exception of one, is in support of the project, I think, under really any circumstances, but was arguing one way or the other for more conservation, or in some cases for affordable housing. I want to make sure we remain realistic and keep our eye on the ball. This is a piece of property that the town doesn't have a right of first refusal for. They have a seller, long-time presence in town that's willing to engage, but that is, as a private party, we can appreciate won't last forever, and they're giving us to town meeting to get our funding together and make a decision here. Really, we need to make our decision based upon what we will know within the next few weeks. So I think that overwhelmingly the support is to support the funding for this project. And many of the concerns that have been raised are things that, as the chair of the planning board, I see all the time, and that are typically handled through a long, extensive planning process. Traffic, the mix of houses, the number of houses, where the houses would be situated on the property, what mitigation there might be. those, for some projects, as anybody who followed 1440 Main Street, can sometimes take 2 years of not only the board's time, but the proponent hiring at sometimes great expense experts, traffic experts, site engineers, and the like. That will come, and I was very glad to see Marcia's presentation of some plans showing potential options, but I don't think we should consider not supporting this project because we don't have a definitive answer on will the entrance be on Upland or will it be on Old Marlborough, or will it be 6 houses or will it be 7 or however many. There will be a planning process for any project that happens there, as required by our zoning bylaw. And I think that at most what we should be doing is expressing our intent, maybe through the way we fund it, it's in terms of the split of 50, of housing and conservation, but we shouldn't lose sight of the ball and what's realistic under the circumstances. Thanks.
Thank you, Burton. And it's so easy, given the strong sentiments that we've read and received, to focus on essentially an end product over which we really have almost no adjudication. What we have is some control over the beginning process. And we do understand that if the town does not in one way or another secure this property, we lose control as a town, which I think no one who wrote to us, I didn't read a single letter that said, oh, good, just don't buy it at all. That wasn't there. Did you read one that said that, Burton?
Just the one comment that was made tonight that they would not support our funding if the entrance was on Old Marlborough, which I guess then the alternative would be a subdivision with an entrance on Upland. But I think that was in the vast minority, of the comments.
What we really heard is don't make it on Upland. So that is the one voice that I've ever heard in that direction. Charles, thank you, Burton, so much for refocusing our focus. Charles.
Yes, I just wanted to reinforce what Mr. Feely mentioned about the size of the housing, smaller sizes being more appropriate for people who might want affordable housing. And I think to apply that concept to Marcia's several alternatives is a very good idea. Less spatial occupancy, and we could plan a development that will be quite different from what the kind of developments we're seeing mostly around town.
Thank you. You're spot on right. Now, Mr. Galper, I think, Josh, behind that telephone number, is that who's behind the telephone number? With a hand raised? 978-369 6437. Is there a comment?
No, this is Jane Prentice, 15 Fern Street.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yes, this is in regard to the cyanobacteria and white pond application.
Yes.
And I would like to make a comment in regard to that. And my comment is that that I think it's very critical that we do everything that we can possibly do to support this application and try to work out the technicalities, because I was on the Planning Board, Public Works Commission, and many, many committees over the years, and our waterways are as important as our land. And I'm passionate about, water testing, and the White Pond community has taken on so much on their own to support this community, and that to see the town come in through the Community Preservation Act and work on this technology and make it happen would be critical and a very important step for 2022 for the water. Because if we put it off till 2023, the eutrophication is going to continue, and the cost of repairing the damage will be much, much higher. All the other types of remediation is very, very expensive. And this new technology is excellent. And And I know that because I spent a lot of time with Dr. Walker in testing water. And I would just really, really like you to consider it. I know this project from being on the planning board for many, many years, and is really taking a tremendous amount of oversight, and there's a lot of support for it. And I'm very happy to hear about that open space. But our water is as critical as our land. And so please do whatever you can to take a look at this application and help the White Pond Advisory Committee get to yes on this. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for calling. Burton, you have your hand up again. Do you? Yeah, okay. Paul?
Yeah, I do. And I have a sort of a higher level budget question that's been on my mind for a while, perhaps on the committee's mind as well. So the, and I don't want to put Marcia on the spot here, but if you take your calculator up, there's $1.9 million in 4 projects that you've proposed. The entire budget is probably around that. And we're going to need some help, Marcia, in prioritizing or trimming or something there. We're going to need some help from you in making choices. I just want to kind of put that out there.
Well, I will. I'll provide you with a list of my priorities, and you can chew on that.
Okay, you don't have to do that now.
And maybe sharpen my pencil on a couple of those projects.
Thank you, Marcia. I also wanted, while we have you on the line, I'm just going to, in relationship to some of these projects, I noticed that the DOT has only spent about 5% of its funding on this kind of small project. I read the materials that you sent quite clear. It says that 5% were spent on of their funding was spent on this kind of project. Now maybe I misread the pie chart, and 5% of the money they have may be a vast amount. I don't know, but
are you talking about the pedestrian bridge?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I meant to say, I'm talking about the pedestrian bridge. Okay. And I noticed that 5% of the DOT funding is spent on this kind of project. And I wondered, what perspective you have about what chance we have of getting the DOT funding.
When you have a Massachusetts Department of Transportation project, the town is required to come up to do the design plans. So we do 25, 75, 100% design plans, construction drawings.
Yeah, you've made that wonderfully clear.
But Mass DOT then will pay for the construction. And a bridge project of this nature is significant. The bridge over Route 2 is about, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm thinking like 15 million to do that bridge. So we know that the money that we're putting in for design at this point in time will be more than matched by construction funding from Mass DOT. For this type of project, you're right. Mass DOT spends a very small amount on bridge project, pedestrian bridge projects or rail trail projects. So this is a unique feature of the Transportation Improvement Program. And I think I might be speaking out of turn. If Elizabeth were still here, she probably would correct me, but I can confirm that information for you just to make sure I'm correct. Okay.
Thanks, Marcia. I was just, it just seemed to me not an unimportant statistic. Now,
Excuse me, can I interrupt? This is Catherine. I'm finally able to.
Finally, you're able to speak. Catherine, please speak. Could you identify yourself and where you live?
Sure, my mic was off. I didn't realize that. But so is my personal mic. I'm like pressing mute again and again. But anyways, it's Catherine Claremont, 26 Hemlock Street. And my comment is simply this: there's no plan or money put aside by town personnel at this juncture for in-pond water quality management. Yet this problem has been going on a very, very long time, as we all know, leading to this summer, which resulted in the closure pretty much the whole summer.
Yeah.
Right. But there is no plan with the town. So that, in my opinion, is one reason why the White Pond Advisory Committee has come forward. I hate to use such a strong word, but I would say there's been some negligence here, and it's time for people to take a look at this problem. It's been written up in reports. The town is aware, and I'd like to be prospective, but we need to turn this around. This is quite serious, as many people have acknowledged. And along with that, and just looking closely at CPA applications, I don't see any application that's actually signed by the town manager for all this year. In fact, several are signed by quote unquote the town of Concord, which I actually don't know who that entity is. I mean, to me, that's a construct. You know, I could understand a chair of a board or an employee signing it, but you know, we can't ask the town of Concord to speak up on their behalf. There's no co-applicants on several of these. There's just a contact person. So I think that, you know, the question of legalities here are broader than just the White Pond Advisory Committee. And in fact, looking at the town of Concord bringing forward an application without having a town board as a co-signature, but just a town employee, it gives the appearance that town employees are making decisions on behalf of taxpayers' dollars without there being a real public process to really get support from a committee or a commission or a board. And, you know, I would also venture to say that in looking at the applications, it's often too committees like the White Pond Advisory Committee, the Friends of, the Freedman Trail Committee, trustees, individuals, you know, and lots of other people co-signing or supporting or providing letters, which is not very different from the White Pond Advisory Committee bringing forward this application. So when people say the town manager is signing, I'm not getting that. And there just seems to be this kind of like this fuzzy thing about who's signing and who's co-signing and how do things get approved that, you know, to be very honest here, just seems like politics. So, you know, I hope we can all sort this through as adults and as responsible people running this town to support the White Pond Advisory Committee and trying to do something that's been amiss for too many years.
Catherine, thank you so much. You wrote a lovely letter, which came in rather late to me, at least, and late this afternoon, late early evening. And I had a chance to read it, and I think perhaps members of our committee did. It's a very thorough and thoughtful letter, and I hope we are always calm and deliberative as a community. Heather, you want to address some of this? Thank you.
Yeah, so just to clarify, all of the applications that come in from the town of Concord or Planning Division, those have all been signed by the town manager.
Okay. So
I'm
Catherine,
not sure what you mean, because I've looked specifically at the applications and they're not signed by the town manager. It says
the town manager signs on the property owner signature.
Okay, well, I'm not really fully understanding that, but that's okay. You know, I trust that you're reporting accurately, but I'm saying on the application itself, it does not say that. And I know that the White Pond Advisory Committee has gone to multiple people asking for signatures, and they've said no. And they've said to go to committees or boards. I've also noted that there's probably only one application that actually has a town board signature, only one. And, you know, they had 2 town signatures, but only one application. So I would just urge this committee to take a look at all the applications and apply some kind of equity about who's signing it and what kind of co-signatures are being attained and what kind of support's being attained, because I'm just being really straight here. This is looking much more political than it is like anything else. And I really hope we can get beyond that, given how important the White Pond water quality is. I mean, this is no joke. This pond could, you know, go to pieces really soon. So I'm just hoping.
So Catherine, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just going to clarify or just respond.
Go ahead, David.
I'm just going to, sorry, Natural Resources Director for the Town of Concord. I'm just going to respond to So once the White Pond application was submitted, we were asked to support the application. It was just complicated because we had not had any participation in the development of the application. We had not had any conversations with where the numbers came from as far as where that 30,000 budget number came from. That
Oh, Delia, you're freezing.
that might be the right number. It's short money. I promising technology. And we're looking forward to working with John Higgins on this, but the process just did not follow the normal town process. So if you look at the town applications, all of them are signed by the town manager, or, you know, in the case of the Asset Bluffs project, the property owner is the owners of the property. It's the
DiGiovanni.
Jim DiGiovanni family, Digi LLC. So they signed as the property owner, but, you know, Marcia Lee Smith for CHDC and I signed the application as the town representative. So there's no politics being played here, but there is a process that needs to be followed. That's all. It's just, that's how town government works. So
No,
just
I
wanted
understand
to
how, I do
clarify that.
understand how town government works.
I'm
I
going to interrupt.
do.
Wait, Catherine, I'm going to interrupt for just a minute. I
Sure.
want you to know that no one on this committee, none of us is interested in holding the town hostage to some bizarre arcane process that undermines good and quality thinking for the town. That is not what's going on here. It's a question of trying to understand that process, trying to adjudicate it wisely, trying to advise applicants about how best to proceed, and then to go forward from there. So I think in the discussion tonight, it was recommended that the White Pond Advisory Committee turn to some people in the town and see if they can, and talk to Stephen Crane and say to which committee, the Public Works, or to whomever, to help to forward this. And there is no political attempt here at all. There's respect for what you're trying to do, an interest in what you're trying to do. And I just want to make that extraordinarily clear. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to voice my opinion, and I've been observing this for a while, and I look forward to people working together.
Well, I hope we always will, Catherine. That certainly is our intent. Thank
It's
you.
very critical that that happens. I think people must recognize that while many of these applications are wonderful, all of them are, and some of them are very much, this one is critical to the pond's health, which is a very imminent thing that can't wait another year.
Thank you very much. We couldn't appreciate more your commentary and your letter, which I'm sure everyone will have a chance to read, which is detailed and helpful. Thank you. And thank you for figuring out how to join us.
Yes, thanks to my husband.
Okay, well, thank your husband.
I will.
All right, Heather, you were going to, we're going to discuss next on our agenda is the CPA funding available for the FY23 cycle. And can you put, oh wait, here's Josh Galper, who tried to speak earlier.
Yes.
Mr. Galper.
Thank you, Diane. Josh Galper, 65 Stone Root Lane, also co-chair of the White Pond Advisory Committee. I just wanted to respond to two process matters. Paul, you asked about sole sourcing. Please be aware that we have done extensive research on this, and we have determined that the APOD technology in the proposal is the only available source of this technology. There are two other possibilities, alum, one other that I'm not remembering and haven't been involved with, but they're much more expensive, not reliable, and we are advised that we can proceed with APOD on the basis that it is the sole source. The second thing, just so the committee is aware, that when we presented to the select board recently, Stephen Crane was on the phone and acknowledged that yes, action needed to be taken about White Pond. If we're now being told that we need to return to Mr. Crane in order to ask him which town committee should be referred to support the application in what way, that's perfectly fine. We're happy to do so. But this would be the first that we're hearing of this part of the process.
I don't think it's the town. I don't think it's to which committee. I may have misunderstood. So somebody who's wiser than I should correct me, but I believe that what they're asking you to do is to find the right office within the town
Right.
to support this, and not a committee, but the office, so that the funding process can work effectively.
Right, and we understand that to be natural resources. So if the process, as per Marcia, is that it needs to be heard from the town manager, that's fine. We'll head in that direction.
Terrific. Thank you so much for your understanding, and let's hope this can all work out well.
And just, let me just say, Josh, if I missed it, I'm sorry. Mine was just a clarifying question in terms of the technology. If you've done that work, then please advise us of, that research and why the sole source justification is there, because I think that's needed.
Yep.
And most of our comments over numerous meetings have been clarifying questions of various sorts. So that's what we're trying to do. Just help, clarifying the process, clarifying the technology, etc.
Sure.
Thank you.
I just also, if I could just state, I think everybody in town also agrees with the intent of the application, that this is something that's really needed to, some sort of, we can't have another year of the beach and the pond being closed. So I think that was the second year since 2015. The problems have gotten worse over the years. And
well, she's frozen, but it has gotten worse over the years. So thank you, Delia, and thank you, Josh.
we need to find a solution to solve that.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's look at the CPA funding and see where we are. Heather, do you have a slide for us to observe? Now, the estimated revenue is 1.815773. We have a designated fund balance of 237,142. We have other reserves, land acquisition reserve, which we can put toward the, should we choose, we can put toward the Assabet River or other such bluff project. We're also going to have to put aside some funding, however, for the fact that we are not quite up to the housing fund.
Just to interject, Diane.
Hey, Heather, can you help me with that one? Yep.
Yeah, so because the 2B Upland Road project includes community housing, any funding towards community housing would count towards that. So we should be okay on the 10%.
Okay, I thought so. And that's the reason I was going to ask you when I wrote down what you said yesterday, and then I started looking at everything. And I thought, wait, I think we're okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Just responding to that comment, but given that, we are not necessarily approving a certain number of houses on the land, is that going to make it complicated with that respect, Heather?
That is the reason we've written to Stuart Saganor.
Okay.
Him, can we place on any monies that we give any conditions? Or do we just have to simply provide the resources, which is what Burton was saying?
Yeah, but it sounds as though from what Heather was just saying, to say that we're...
I got your question.
Do you see what you get? Sorry, yeah.
So, but if the money designates $500,000 for housing,
yes,
$100,000 for land acquisition, then we've already made a commitment, have we not?
Exactly.
Yeah. To some housing.
Yeah, which means we would need the contingency, but it's kind of getting ahead of the process. So I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable with whether that's going to work out.
One of the things, at least, and I don't mean to speak to this, but I've thought about it so much, I'm going to. One of the things that I'm so impressed by is the response that Marcia has had to the community outpouring of perspective. Because if you look at what was originally presented to us and the notions, it was quite different than what we heard tonight. And so that would suggest that a really reasonable dialogue can be forthcoming. And Marcia said, yeah, look at, we're going to have time to talk about this. I think the suggestion, and I think Dory Keough summarized it, which was, can you keep this one close to the end before you make a deliberation? It's not unwise. The problem is, of course, it's so much money that if we keep it close to the end, the question is then what else can we do? We also have to remember that we have to go before the select board and ask for their ordering of requests. Marcia will give us her ordering of requests. So we have some other, perspectives to fold into our own deliberations. Yeah, Peter.
Yes, I just had an observation about are we talking about the funding?
Yes, honey.
So it looks like there's two different memos here. One is an update dated 11/17, and I guess the good news is it looks like the available funding has gone up by about $100,000. I just wanted to clarify that because it closes the gap between the applications and funding available, fairly significantly.
Right. It's pretty impressive, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah, it's only a gap of $391,000 or so, which is, it is a gap, but that's by some mechanism, we probably will be able to close that.
The only question, Peter, is that we have sometimes kept an undesignated fund balance. And we'll have to discuss why we've done that, how we've done that, and how much of that we need to hold in abeyance for any particular reason. So that will be, part of what we discussed. But Peter, that's a good observation. Can you move this slide down just a little bit and show us, Heather, there for what what the balance is? I mean, how much money do we have to eliminate from the requests in order to move forward?
This is the total amount available.
Right. And that's the total amount. And how much has been requested?
I'd have to go look.
It's about 2,545.
Right. So that's about $300,000, Peter, right?
Right.
Yep. If we spend all of our designated fund balance.
Right.
Okay. All right. So that gives us a perspective as a committee on how to move forward. Did you all have a chance to read on the committee the new materials that we've received? We received some new materials on White Farm. We received quite a few actually new materials on all sorts of things, from the library oral history project to the Assabet River Bluff River. Never mind, Bluff project. Are there questions about any of that anyone would like just preliminarily to raise from what they read? And have you had a chance to read them and review them? Paul?
A question on the, well, it's not exactly those new documents, the town council recommendations.
Yeah.
Is there just one memo on that, or was there additional communication?
Well, there was a letter, Paul, that that at least that it's in the materials, I believe.
Right.
That Mina wrote to Heather, but it was undated. So I wrote Heather and said, what was the date of that letter? That is a response to the White Pond Advisory Committee. Now, and it was not saying, no, you may not fund this, but it did say he didn't think it was advisable to fund this without town support. That doesn't mean we couldn't go ahead and do it. He's not saying it's illegal, but he's saying it would create a poor precedent. Well, so I think by throwing it back to the White Pond Advisory Committee, asking them to seek, town support from some, town offices or another, I think is going to help that project and eliminate the legal concerns. Is that how you read it, Paul?
It is. I thought there was a separate memo. If there's just one memo, yeah, I get it.
It was that one memo that, at least Heather, am I right? Is that the one memo that you've received?
We have the one memo from town council providing their opinion on all of the projects. And
Right.
then one email from town council providing their opinion on White Pond eligibility.
Right.
Okay, that's one I didn't see. Is that in the documents, the email?
It is, and you'll find it under White Pond Advisory.
Yeah, of course. I'll look.
That little, yeah, obviously. But if you look in that little area, you'll see Nancy.
So was it the second memo where town council raised the question of what was actually in the charge of the White Pond Advisory Committee? Or was that in the first, their first memo?
It was in the second one.
So he was raising a question of whether or not their charge included overseeing these funds.
That's exactly right, Nancy.
Yeah, so that's related to the town approval, but different. Because they may not have the authority.
It's related to what organization would receive that funding and be able to allocate the funding. So it was perceived by one person as a political issue, but it's not really a political issue. It's a housing issue that has some legal ramifications. And so that's a reason that I think that our legal counsel has weighed in.
Yeah.
Sarah.
So my understanding from what Delia said was that one of the concerns was the fact that they were being asked to support the natural resources, were being asked to support an application they had nothing to do with actually compiling. Okay. So, you know, assuming that they may have some suggestions for change. Oh, sorry, Delia, I see you there. I don't want to speak for you, but my question is, you know, assuming that there may be some pieces in the application that, you know, natural resources may have advised to write differently or whatever. But I know that the applications can't be changed once they're submitted. So, you know, is there...
It can be refined, Sarah.
Okay, it can be. Okay.
Increase the amount of funding. They can be clarified.
Okay.
It can't be dramatically changed, but everybody who's more experienced than I have, John, Tom, Peter.
Right.
But I don't think we could change the holding group for the application, the actual applicant. It seems that there isn't. It's unclear if there's actually a structure in place to implement the proposal.
Right. So there isn't really an opportunity for natural resources to come up with an alternative, you know, approach, for example. So I think that I just see that as a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be the responsibility of the White Pond Advisory Committee, not ours, Sarah. And we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yep.
Yes, Paul.
Yeah, I'm a little perplexed about this issue about town signatures, co-applications. This is something that was raised by the committee earlier, and I think the applicant was aware. By
which committee, Paul? I'm sorry. By the committee.
It was raised by us, by our yes, committee. So in the earlier, during the presentations about sponsorship and process, I'm not sure if the applicant has reached out to try to change that or try to revise that or try to, and just, we seem to be stuck where we were on this several months ago.
Well, Paul, you're right. We brought this up a long time ago in our discourse.
Yeah.
Particularly given our collective respect for Delia, we wondered why there was no signature from Delia, you know, on this or something that was forthcoming. So I think this is really the responsibility of the White Pond Advisory Committee, and one trusts that they will now move forward on this and try to find their way through that thicket and figure out how to do it. I hope it is not perceived by citizens of Concord as somehow a political issue or some sort of, you know, encumbering red tape, because we all believe that White Pond needs to be available for people. John. You're now.
I just wanted to say, I think we should see what they come up with, how it's presented to us, and we have been flexible in the past. We may have to make a tougher decision on flexibility than we've ever made before. But the issue is so substantial that we may be challenged to be more flexible than we've ever been before in order to accept an application.
Yeah, John, can I ask you a question about that? Do you have any comment on town council's caution in the memo? Because it's pretty clearly stated that there is a caution against setting this precedent. And
no, I think we would have to see what the advisory committee comes up with in terms of a town, I don't know what you say, sponsorship, town application. And then we'd have to decide if we feel comfortable accepting a late revised application with an actual new applicant or co-applicant.
Yeah, I don't.
I know you have hesitation about it. I just think this issue, we ought to at least be open to debating it because of the importance of the issue.
And perhaps the naivete of the group that forwarded the proposal. I mean, if we can believe that that's the reason. Yes, Nancy.
I would like to say that without having a policy, I feel very uncomfortable allowing major revisions to applications without allowing other applicants the same opportunity.
Let's define major revision, Nancy. How do you
define
major revision? The signature of a
I can't do that right now. I'm just saying in general, I think it's not a good idea to allow a revision, a substantial revision, like the sponsor. The town sponsor is a major revision and would hopefully go back and involve NRC, for instance, in this.
Okay.
But I think revisions to applications could be a slippery slope.
Thank you so much. I love this committee. Tom.
Well, it appears to me on the surface, and I guess I don't have any depth of understanding, that the town manager has supported town council in developing this opinion. And so it seems, right, I don't think the town council is authorized to do things without the town manager's approval, right? To spend the town's money in developing this kind of stuff. And so I mean, I would make sure they're in concert, but I guess that, you know, that needs to be, for me, kind of disentangled, you know, and clarified.
Thank you, Tom, so much. This is all complicated by the fact that our town manager will not be our town manager as of December 31st.
Right.
And so I don't know who the interim town manager will be, but we do have a kind of, there is a certain complexity in all of this that will be, you know, that people will have to work out. And that we will have to take into consideration as we work all this through. John, you have your hand up again?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
No, I'm sorry.
You know, process is so important in so many ways. And in other ways, it becomes the noose of a thoughtful and independent committee. And, you know, when we allow it to guide us, inform us, and make us wiser, it's terribly important. When it strangles us, we need to kind of wrestle with whether that strangling is appropriate or inappropriate at any one given time.
I have to ask, what is strangle? What is the definition of strangle?
Strangle is when we
you asked me a similar question. Yeah. So
I'll tell you what I think. Actually, I think strangle, Nancy, is when we have a common sentiment that we want to do something, but some sort of language prevents us from doing it.
I don't feel strangled yet.
Yeah, strangled. So you know what I think of it. I think I mean this. Yeah, I love you. I think this makes there are the strict constructionists in this world.
Yes, there are.
And then there are the more flexible. I'm unfortunately or fortunately one of the more flexible constructionists. And then, but I love the fact that we have strict constructionists on the committee because that causes us to think carefully about what we're doing. Peter.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just want to say, wrapping up the White Pond discussion, or maybe I'm not wrapping it up, but it seems to me as if it's just a basic communications issue here. And that's pretty easy to resolve, between various parties. So I'm hopeful that will happen, because I think we all agree this is a problem that's not going away.
Thank you, Peter. And Tom?
Well, I guess I agree with Nancy here. I don't feel strangled by this. I think that in fact, our hard work in collaboration with the applicants, I mean, what we're trying to do is yield the best applications possible.
I agree.
And for consideration, I mean, and we're willing to work hard, extra hard, whatever it takes to make the applications the best they can possibly be. And I think that's our objective. And then we have to, of course, make hard decisions. But I think this is the time when we go meeting after meeting, just trying to help and refine and guide and make them just the best they can possibly be for our community.
Tom, I completely agree. And I think my bemused reaction has to do with, what makes a major adjustment. So if all it needs is the signature of a committee and that's worked through, is that considered a major change? And that's what I thought I heard you and Nancy saying we really can't allow. So, and John,
no, I did not say that.
Okay.
I'm urging caution because I think it could open the door to a lot of changes after applications were submitted, which could complicate our deliberations and our decision-making process.
Absolutely. And John, I think, was saying we may have to be more flexible than we're accustomed to being. And Tom, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your comment. I apologize.
I just say we take them one at a time.
One at a time as we go forward. All right. So we've reviewed any new material that has come in. And it is, let's see what time it is. It is, my watch has just ran out of power, so I can't tell what time it is. Just a minute.
It's 9:30.
9:30.
9:30. Thank you. I think that I don't think at 9:30, are we prepared to go forward with the discussion of potential recommendations at this time? Or do we wish to wait for our next meeting to really dive into that? May I hear a sensibility from the committee, please?
There is so much new material that was submitted so late that it's pretty difficult to dive in tonight, I think, for me.
And I think the sharpening of the pencil that Marcia talked about, I think that's important, because without that, we're a little bit handcuffed, I think, in making some decisions.
I would just repeat that Marcia's three $300,000 projects, each of them will be benefited by her sharpening on those three big ones.
Yep, I think so as well.
Yeah.
Any other commentary? Any other comments, Tom?
Yeah, may I just, in terms of clarification, as we've now had a very good discussion in our public meeting forum, as we go forward, we hope to get prioritization from town manager and select board.
Right.
I don't know if we normally do from our town planner, but certainly we would want that to be in concert with town manager, I would think. And so just whatever coordinate, so we don't get these guys miscoordinated. I think we need to make sure they're coming together. And I know Susan Bates spoke in favor of one of the applications this evening. I'm assuming just for our own meeting minutes, for herself, not representing the select board.
That's exactly right, Tom. I think she made that clear, but maybe
I think so, but just to be probably good in terms of the as we develop the minutes.
Yeah, that's important.
And Heather, do we have any, I'm sorry, Heather, do we have any indication in terms of when we might receive that prioritization from the select board and also from the town manager?
It has been requested. I will follow up on that tomorrow.
Okay, because that's very, very helpful.
Yeah, we're meant to be on their agenda very soon. And Heather did request this well before the holiday, the most recent holiday. Not the upcoming or the present holiday, but the recent holiday, the former holiday. I think Marcia is the one who volunteered to give us a hierarchical list, and I presume she would work with the town manager to help to refine that. The 2022 meeting calendar, can we look at that for a minute?
All of your meeting dates for 2022 have been added to the website.
Thank you. So those, just to remind us, is the 7th of December, the 21st of December, the 4th of January, and the 18th of January.
Yes, so those are all of the dates before the warrant closes.
Okay.
And the warrant closes on February 2nd.
Right. I think within 4 meetings, we should be okay. Does everyone else feel that they're beginning to have a settled sensibility for things? Tom, how do you feel? Are you feeling like 4 meetings should do it? You've got more experience than I do at this. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if I don't have any special insight, got a good experience here, but yeah, I think, with some good candor with care, some good constructive dialogue, we absolutely can do it,
I love that phrase, candor with
I
care.
like that. Yeah, I like that.
Tom, are you a speechwriter? That's gorgeous.
Does our final voting occur on January 18th? Is that the magic?
What we will probably do, Paul, is to approve of certain projects just as a go ahead, boom.
Okay.
And then we'll see what money we have left and then try to figure out what we do from there is usually the way it works. I mean, one of the odd things with COVID is that we're not sitting in front of a screen looking at these things, and then watching each other's faces and juggling things. So Tom managed it brilliantly last year during COVID. So we'll try to do that again this year.
I asked because I'm going to be on vacation on the 18th. I could call in from Maui, but
Maui!
I could.
I don't dare. We'll all Maui.
If Hawaii lets me in, then who knows what's going to happen.
Oh yeah. Now, Paul, if you need somebody to carry your luggage, I'd be really happy to do it. That just sounds irresistible, Tom.
Well, yeah, I just wonder, and maybe Heather's a better guide than I am here, that in maybe some of our recent years past, we had a little bit of a working grid, and in terms of preparation, a little bit of pre-homework, we, kind of try to take a run through it and have it hit the budget and see where you would fully fund and where you might begin to shape it a little bit, because then when you come to the discussion with the full group, you begin to develop at least a preliminary point of view, and then it's nice to be kind of open to the points of view of others and make and make a reshape. But it's a lot to just do it cold without some preparation. I think it's a lot, But anyway, Heather can help.
Happy to send that Excel spreadsheet out to everyone tomorrow. I do have it drafted already, so I will send that out and everyone can do their own homework. Don't send it back to me or anything. Just wait until the next meeting.
Yeah, Sarah, if I could just jump in quick. So last year, I remember for myself, I did 3 columns and I did a scenario A, scenario B, scenario C. It helped me just think about it a few different ways. And then as people presented, their kind of sensibility, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that helps me. So anyway.
Sarah, and then I want to grab Rosalind before she leaves. Sarah, go ahead.
I just had a question. Can you remember when we're going to find out if there will be funding for the Bruce Freeman? I think it's the Bruce Freeman Trail where there was some funding in question. I can't remember when we're going to find out if that will be provided or not.
I cannot remember. I thought about it this afternoon. Does anybody remember?
Yeah. Oh, Marcia's there. Go ahead.
I was hoping to have received the letter. According to Mass DOT project manager, he had it drafted and was waiting for it to be signed. So it's imminent, and I will go from there.
Okay.
When I talk about sharpening the pencil, that's what I'm hoping for.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Because that will obviously narrow the gap even more if we get that.
Thank you very much. Rosalind, I wanted to ask you a question. And the thorough adjudication of all that will require everybody having time to read the additional information you've sent, for which I'm grateful. Besides your Oxford comma, my dear, which I understand, since you were in battle with the British, you wouldn't use the Oxford comma. But besides that, my question has to do with the, oh man, I got off the Oxford comma, now I've forgotten what the question was. It's really important, so just stick with me for a second. Oh, have you approached the Historic District Commission? Because I noticed a year ago this time, they had some concerns and they wanted to be able to discuss them with you and talk, kind of throw in their considerations about this invaluable property in the town. Have you gone back to them and had such a discussion? I could see no indication that that had happened.
So 3 things. 1, Oxford comma. I
Oh.
love the Oxford comma. And and Tom Wilson and I don't see eye to eye on that, and I lost this time, but I'll win next time.
Okay, I'll take Tom on. Go ahead.
So second, we met last year.
Right.
With the Historic District Commission.
November 12th, 2020, right.
Correct. And if you'll remember, they actually wrote a letter of recommendation for us as part of our file. And our plan is to continue to work with them and keep them informed. We have been doing so along the way. And as soon as we have additional blueprints or other documents that they need to see about the exterior and the landscape, particularly surrounding, they know that they will be keeping us informed. Since the work of 2022, the fall of 2021, 2022, and the beginning of 2023 is all interior, it has no effect on exterior considerations from their point of view at this time. However, we were lucky enough to recruit Peter Nobile, past president of the Historic District Commission, to be a member of the Wright Tavern Leadership Trust, a Legacy Trust, I apologize. And he has now advised us on quite a number of issues and has come forward, for example, with edits to the preservation restriction, with comments for the historic preservation architects. He's attended the meetings with the historic preservation architects and the engineer as we kick off the planning phase. So our hope is that by keeping as much communication going during this early planning stage, they will be completely up to date, as will you, the CPC, when we begin the actual exploratory demolition and then the construction phase.
Well, Rosalind, they did write a letter, but their letter was, I wouldn't say equivocal, but it did say there were some concerns they had and they wanted to be able, and that I was just wondering if how that dialogue was, how that was, whether that was forthcoming or not. Yeah.
It's planned. We don't have anything to show them yet, but we believe that the relationship is very open and we're keeping them informed about the process that we're going through. You might remember from last year that the planning process couldn't start until this past summer, early fall. And so the initial, if I said blueprints and diagrams and landscape preservation plans and things like that, we expect those all to be ready by mid to late spring and maybe even early summer if we're slowed down at all. And they're in the list of people who will be included, and they know that.
Thank you very much. Tom and then Nancy.
Thank you, Diane. Rosalind, I really appreciate what appears to be a lot of work since the last meeting. And I haven't gone through it in great detail, but I've kind of looked through it. But I'm just trying to keep up with what you just said. So are there changes to things like the PR that will be kind of supplemental that we'll need to take into consideration getting into this deliberative phase that we're going into?
We've drafted, in terms of the preservation restriction specifically, we now have a draft that is going through a review process. The Legacy Trust has reviewed it. The trustees of the tavern are in the process of reviewing it, and we have given copies of it to the historic preservation architects and the architecture firm that is working with the tavern on this. We decided in a meeting, coincidentally just today, of the Legacy Trust to take our draft preservation restriction. So our lawyer for the trustees has already seen it, and we decided that we would take it back to the author of the original template that we used, which is the preservation restriction for the Nantucket Athenaeum. The woman who was the executive director of the Nantucket Preservation group there and who authored this template that we used for ours. It's now we understand it's the standard now for preservation restrictions in the Commonwealth. We're going to go back to her and ask her to review it as well, because none of us have the same kind of experience that maybe some of you have, or that someone as professional as she has. So we expect that in the month of December, maybe dribbling into January, that we will have enough eyes have passed over it that we will then be in a position to have it approved by First Parish, the trustees, and the Legacy Trust. And then we will be forwarding it, of course, to you, the Historic District, and others who need to see it. I don't know if that's what you were hoping to hear, Tom, but that's kind of where we are.
Well, and maybe Heather can help us, but I mean, it sounds like schedule wise, then it'll become fairly tight.
Well, our plan was to have it done by the end of this calendar year. You asked for it in the summertime. It was not on our original list of things, and it became part of the requirements, I guess. So we learned about this first at the beginning of the summer. Summer is a very hard time to get a lawyer to work on something like this, especially pro bono. We were lucky enough to have an early draft in October. It's going through the review process now, November, December, and we hope to have it sealed by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think the conversation has been a little confused between the Historical Commission and the HDC. The agreement specified that the preservation restriction would be developed in consultation and communication with the Historical Commission. That unfortunately has not happened, and the original draft that was submitted specifically says that there will be nothing for the interior, and that Wright Tavern will proceed without concern about the interior. And it was a mistake to think that the preservation restriction was to apply to the exterior only, given HDC's purview over exterior aspects of a historic building and a historic district. So my concern among others is to get clarity around what is being observed that was in the agreement and stated pretty explicitly about protections for the interior. So I just wanted to clarify that that's, I don't know what the new draft or the existing draft includes or doesn't include. I don't think, the Historical Commission hasn't been consulted.
Not
and
yet.
we were prepared to provide you, I think, a lot of help that would have kept you from going down a wrong road.
Oh,
so I'm sorry that didn't happen.
Okay, I think we might have been confused about process because we are novices at this. Neither the trustees nor the Legacy Trust have ever been down this process. Yep. We understood, and I will apologize for this. We understood that it was our obligation to draft the initial version, and we are in that process of drafting the initial version, and that then we were to present it. And we went to the author of the Nantucket Athenaeum. We went to the authors of several other preservation restrictions and consolidated those with the help of a lawyer pro bono. If we made a mistake in the process here, it was unintentional. It was beginner's mistake, and we're sorry for that. We are close to finishing the draft, and then the hope was to take it to the expert teams for revision.
Nobody has mentioned the Historical Commission in this process, in this discussion so far. And I think that's caused you to expend a lot of time and effort where we could have been really helpful. And I'm sorry that didn't happen. I'm curious to know if the current draft has any provisions for the interior, because that's what the concerns were about the interior.
Our mistake then, and we will do our very best to correct that. Thank you. And we really apologize for beginner's errors here. I want to say that it is a big help to all of us in all these different groups that are working together so hard on behalf of the tavern, where some of us have enormous experience, like the structural engineer working with buildings like this, and some of us have no experience working with structures like this,
Well,
like me.
You have a historical architect who I think was also the author of the preservation restriction for the Thoreau birthplace.
He never even once mentioned that we needed to come to a different group from or use a different process from the one we were using. So it
was in the grant agreement is what I'm referring to. Actually, I'm not even sure if he saw that.
We will.
Anyway,
we will do our very best. We'll do our best to correct that.
And thank you for that clarification, Tom.
Well, thank you. And I know we're probably in extended time here, but just for my own clarity, just to make myself clear, I guess, is that it feels like we are doing a couple things at the same time. We're suggesting that last year's funding should be put in motion. And through the documents you've been forwarding, it's clear that you're initiating things, and I think that's great. And then I do agree, because I have it up in front of me with Nancy, that in terms of the grantor's reserved rights, section 6, paragraph C, it clearly says the right, you're suggesting that you can make any kind of change to the interior. And so you wouldn't want this kind of work happening right now without a PR, and the draft PR says that you're privileging any kind of change to the interior. They're in conflict from the kinds of conversations we've had. And so I don't want you to move forward aggressively if you're really committed to saying you have the right, it says it right here in paragraph C, the right to make changes of any kind to the interior of the building, when we've had extensive conversations about various aspects of the interior, maybe most importantly, the attic. And so this just seems in conflict with the kind of conversations we've had. And now that we're trying to expedite and get a kind of alignment between last year's funding and the scope of last year to allow a clear path to this year's funding, it feels like these things have got to be kind of straightened out, because I'm just trying to help you understand what's in my head. I don't know if I'm stating it very, very clearly, but that's what I'm a little bit worried about. I wouldn't want you to say, well, we went in there, we did those were imperatives. We did the structural thing, and that required us to do all that adding stuff. But don't worry, because we have the right to make any changes to the interior anyway, per the draft PR that you all reviewed,
So thank you for that, Tom. But I want to take exception to the word aggressive. We are being extremely cautious and taking a very slow, very thoughtful approach to any form of change to the interior. So, for example, the team that is meeting next week to discuss absolutely limited demolition purely for exploratory purposes is the meeting next week is to see how little can possibly be damaged just in order to get inside the upstairs of the attic and the significant problematic areas in the basement, so that the engineers can actually come up with blueprints. There is nothing aggressive happening here. And
I completely understand what you're saying, and I absolutely, and I 110% trust your intentions. Just the written word is the grantor's reserved rights, not requiring further approval by grantee, the right to make changes of any kind to the interior of the building. So, that's what it says. So what you're saying and what you're writing are not exactly aligned.
I hear you, and I want to repeat that we hired a lawyer who has never written a PR before to do this pro bono for us, so that we didn't add any additional cost to this, who used PRs coming from the top examples that we could find in the Commonwealth, who drafted something that is now under review. This is not a final.
No,
We're not,
understood.
we're not putting a stake in the ground, and we are trying so hard to be good. We are trying so hard to be cooperative. We're trying so hard to be transparent, and we're trying so hard to save this building. I really, really hope that you can hear that there is no one on any of these committees who wants to, nobody wants to turn this important building into a Brigham's or a Friendly's or a Kmart. This is not where we're going.
We
We're
understand
trying.
that.
Okay, I
don't think anyone thought you were, but I think there are questions about language and process that are pretty important.
And these are very important. And if I was a lawyer, or if I was a professional at any of this, or if anybody on the Right Tavern Legacy Trust was, we would have corrected this before you saw it. But part of what is happening is that we are meeting with you when we are not ready. When these teams the work hasn't happened quite yet.
Rosalind, could I say, I think there's plain language in the grant agreement, and our conversations were really pretty clear. And it's hard to understand and to believe in where you're going and how you're going to get there when there seemed to be such misunderstanding of the basics from the beginning last year. So I'm just really concerned about, I'm really quite concerned about granting additional funding now. I mean, already it's close to $400,000, I think, that Right Tavern has received. And with this, I forget the figure, I wrote it down somewhere, but we can do the math. It's something like $685,000 if this request is approved. And I wish I could see more involvement of your historical architectural people in, I wish we could see more results of that collaboration. That's, I guess, what I would say.
I hear you, and I think I guess what we would ask you for is, there's so much that is in the early stages that we are preparing, that we are sending you, that it's that I'm sorry that you're not satisfied with where things are right now.
Well,
I hear you, and we want to be so careful with this building that there hasn't been a single hammer swung in that building because we have been so careful, because we are being so careful. There was work that a year ago we thought would be done by this December, and we stopped it because we found that it would damage historic fabric, or that it might harm important elements of the building. And until we had professionals in there like Larry Sorley and Stephen Mallory, we were not willing to go forward with things that might have satisfied the grant agreement, but would have been wrong to do for the building. But I hear you. I think we all hear you. I think we all want to do the best we can for the building. I apologize for what we haven't done right so far, and I hope we can fix it by next time.
Thank you. I think there's obviously an ongoing dialogue, and Rosalind, I hope you will reach out to us through Heather with specific questions, specific advances that you're making, any concerns you have about this discussion that will help your committee to move forward in a way that is that connects with last year's grant and this year's ongoing grant in a way that is clear to all of us. And I know you're trying very hard. We understand that.
We hope to do our best.
There's certainly is no ill intent here. Yes, John. You just muted yourself, John.
I have a question for Tom and Nancy, because I'm not clear on the, I think I've been seeing this as a distinction between the preservation restriction and what Tom called putting the money into motion. But in Tom and Nancy's mind, is the preservation restriction a precondition of being able to move forward in any kind of consideration of the next round of funding? How do they fit together?
Well, it was not a precondition for the first grant, but I think the Historical Commission and others were expecting to see some assurance of the involvement of preservation professionals and to see a reflection for a concern for the interior. But it seems that that was,
But again, the professionals, I take it, would deal with the ongoing putting of the money in motion. The interior, is that part of the language that needs to be in the restriction?
it was in the grant agreement.
Okay.
Specifically. I don't have that right in front of me. I have piles of stuff around me right now, but I didn't pull that out again. But somebody may remember it, but my recollection, it was very explicit in terms of including the preservation would include both the interior and the exterior. With the exterior being covered partly by HDC, I think that was always recognized that HDC really had a regulatory role there.
I want to say that I am surprised by this commentary, because from the perspective of all of the people who've been working on this, everyone has been included to the best of my knowledge. And if we've missed something, we will make a correction. We will absolutely fix that. But the many hours that the historic preservation architects, the historic landscape preservation architects have already put in, the architectural team, the engineering team, the tactical demolition team.
I know you've spent a
Uh,
lot of time and effort on this, but you mentioned the historical landscape people. I don't think we ever talked about a historical landscape.
Yeah, that was
It's
not
not part of the CPC application. That's a separate issue, and it's part of the overall
Current
design and
one,
work.
the current one.
but not last year's, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
not last year's.
Correct.
Yeah, so that was a new one.
Correct.
Well, obviously, there's some clarification about language and process, Rosalind, that needs to be in ongoing discourse between the committee and the hard work that you all are doing and the hard work we're doing in trying to make an honorable process for our team.
Yeah, very sorry.
And when none of us want to in any way jeopardize the value of that structure. And
I'm certainly available.
Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. And Rosalind, no need to be sorry. This is a super important and complex project, and you are the shepherd. You're doing an amazing job, an amazing amount of work. So thank you. But you were also receiving all of this complexity. So thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
Peter, do you have your hand up?
Well, yeah, the question I had, a related question is, I'm on the website.
Have we lost? I think we've lost Rosalind, but go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Where can I find the grant agreements from last year on the website? Heather, is that a question for you?
I don't believe they're on the website anymore. But I
Okay.
can email out the Right Tavern grant agreement if you'd like me to.
No, that's okay.
I think it would be good to see it.
Yeah. I've got
We're
mine
not-
still on paper from last year. I've been hauling it around, so I still have mine.
I might have it electronically.
It would be great to see it in writing for everybody on the committee.
Yeah.
I'll send it out.
Thank
It
you.
looks like maybe we've lost Rosalind. I'm not sure if she's still with us, but
yeah.
But I think, this particular project and a couple of applications, I guess, including the one we're supposed to be deliberating on and starting at our next meeting. I guess we're kind of getting into it today or this evening, because it is rather complex, and trying to give them every bit of help we can. But I think some way to organize the conversation, because there's a little bit of discussion around the application of last year and how it's moving forward, the PR that's in progress, and then of course there's the primary focus is this application. But I guess it needs some context to be able to discuss it properly.
Thank you, Tom. I think you're spot on, right? Both for that clarification and that comment. At 10 o'clock at night, is there other business that anyone would like to bring up at this point?
No.
I just want to thank everybody. This year has proven to be a more complicated year than the CPC has faced, before. Your patience, your thoroughness, your thoughtfulness is deeply appreciated. Let's not lose our goodwill, our optimism as we move forward. I'm sure we won't. We'll see you all up in December on the 7th. And if you have questions, please send them to Heather or to myself. And in the meanwhile, keep watching our letters that come in and out that are being thoughtfully recorded and faithfully recorded by Heather. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Nancy.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Tom?
Aye.
Aye. Sarah?
Aye.
Burton? Hello, Burton. Hello,
Yes,
Burton.
sorry. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Peter?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Nancy?
Aye.
And myself. Aye. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you all on December 2nd.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Diane, nice job, Diane.
Good night. Good work, Diane.